A cryptic letter lures Hercule Poirot to Ravenwood Manor, where a shadowy admirer promises a crime that will shatter the very meaning of guilt. Who is this mastermind, orchestrating a deadly game among a cast of strangers, each hiding a dark secret? As a poisoned rose appears in a secret society's rituals unfold, Poirot must unravel a web of betrayal. Coded messages mean a chilling question. What if the ultimate crime leaves no body, only broken minds? Can Poirot's little gray cells outwit a plot that redefines murder itself? Chapter 1. The enigmatic invitation. The late autumn sun hung low over London, casting a golden haze through the windows of Hercule Poirot's impeccably ordered flat at Whitehaven Mansions. The room, with its polished mahogany furniture and neatly arranged bookshelves, exuded an air of meticulous calm, reflection of the man himself. Poirot, his small, fastidious frame clad in a perfectly tailored suit, sat at his desk, a cup of tisane steaming beside him. His mustache, waxed 2 razor-sharp points, twitched slightly as he studied a letter that had arrived with the morning post. Its envelope, cream-colored and embossed with a subtle crest, bore no return address, only the words M. Hercule Poirot in an elegant, looping script. Captain Arthur Hastings, Poirot's steadfast friend and occasional confidant, lounge in an armchair by the fire, flipping through the Times with a distracted air. "I say, Poirot," he remarked, glancing up, "you've been staring at that letter for a good 10 minutes. Anything interesting? Or is it another admirer begging for your autograph?" Poirot's green eyes flickered with amusement, but his expression remained grave. "En ami, this is no mere fan letter. It is an enigma." He held the letter aloft, its single page catching the light. "Observe, Hastings. The paper is of the finest quality, the ink a rare shade of indigo, and the words are chosen with a precision that intrigues the little gray cells." Hastings set down his newspaper, his curiosity piqued. "Don't keep me in suspense, old chap. What does it say?" Crow cleared his throat and read aloud, his voice measured, each syllable enunciated with care. "My dear Monsieur Poirot, your reputation as a seeker of truth precedes you. I am but an admirer of justice, one who believes that crime in its purest form is an art yet to be perfected. I invite you to Ravenwood Manor, in the heart of the Devon countryside, for a gathering that promises to challenge your unparalleled mind. A crime is brewing, one that will redefine the boundaries of guilt and innocence. Come and bring your esteemed companion, Captain Hastings. Your presence is requested this Friday eve. A car will collect you at precisely 6 o'clock. Yours." In anticipation, an admirer of Justice Hastings frowned, his brow furrowing. "Sounds like a bit of a lark, doesn't it? Or perhaps a trap. No signature, no clue who this admirer is. Dan, what's this nonsense about a crime that hasn't happened yet?" Poirot folded the letter with deliberate care, placing it back in its envelope. "A lark, you say? Non, Hastings? This is no jest. The writer speaks of a crime with the confidence of one who knows it will occur, and yet they invite Hercule Poirot, to witness it. This is a challenge, a gauntlet thrown at the feet of justice itself." Hastings leaned forward, his eyes bright with excitement. "You're not seriously considering going, are you? It could be dangerous. Why, for all we know, this admirer is some madman with a grudge." Poirot's lips curled into a faint smile. "Danger, mon ami, is the spice that sharpens the mind, and as for grudges, bah, this were a mere vendetta, the letter would lack such elegance. No, there is purpose here, a design most intricate. I must go to Ravenwood Manor, and you, my dear Hastings, will accompany me." Hastings sighed, knowing resistance was futile. "Very well, Poirot, but I hope you're packing your revolver alongside that infernal mustache wax." Poirot chuckled softly. The little gray cells, Hastings, are my weapon of choice. Now, prepare yourself. We depart tomorrow. The following evening, as the clock struck 6, a sleek, black Rolls-Royce glided to a stop outside Whitehaven Mansions. The driver, a taciturn man in a peaked cap, said nothing beyond confirming their names before ushering them into the car. The journey to Devon was long, the road winding through mist-shrouded moors and shadowed forests. Poirot sat in silence, his fingers steepled, his mind already dissecting the mystery of the letter. Hastings, less accustomed to such brooding, filled the silence with speculation. Perhaps it's a rich eccentric hosting some elaborate game, he ventured. You know, like those murder mystery dinners people are so fond of nowadays. Poirot's eyes remained fixed on the passing landscape. A game, perhaps, but one with stakes far higher than amusement. The writer speaks of redefining crime. That is no idle phrase, Hastings. It suggests a mind that sees beyond the ordinary, a mind that dares to innovate in the realm of the illicit. The car turned onto a narrow lane, flanked by ancient oaks whose branches formed a canopy overhead. At last, Ravenwood Manor came into view, its silhouette stark against the twilight sky. The house was a sprawling, Gothic edifice, stone facade adorned with ivy and gargoyles, its windows glowing with the warm flicker of candlelight. As the car rolled to a stop, the front door opened, revealing a butler whose stiff posture and impassive face suggested a life spent in service to grandeur. "Welcome, gentlemen," the butler intoned, his voice as crisp as his starched collar. "Lady Beatrice Ravenwood awaits you in the drawing room." Poirot and Hastings stepped into the entrance hall, a cavernous space lined with portraits of stern-faced ancestors. The air carried the scent of old wood and wax polish, mingled with something sharper, jasmine perhaps, or something more exotic. The butler led them through a maze of corridors to a drawing room where a fire crackled in a massive hearth. The room was a study in opulence, velvet drapes, crystal chandeliers, a Persian rug that seemed to glow in the fireht. Lady Beatrice Ravenwood stood at the center of the room. A striking woman in her late 40s, her auburn hair swept into an elegant chignon. Her emerald gown shimmered as she moved, and her eyes, sharp and assessing, met Poirot's with a mixture of curiosity and challenge. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, extending a gloved hand. "Your presence honors us, Captain Hastings." "A pleasure. I trust your journey was comfortable." "Most comfortable," Madame Poirot replied, bowing slightly. "But I confess, I am most curious about the purpose of this gathering." The invitation was intriguing. Lady Beatrice's smile was enigmatic. "All in good time, Monsieur Poirot. First, allow me to introduce my guests." She gestured to the others in the room, a collection of individuals as varied as they were. Fascinating. First was Victor Langley, a playwright whose sharp wit and sharper tongue had made him the darling of London's theater scene. His dark eyes sparkled with mischief as he raised a glass of brandy in greeting. Beside him stood Clara Vane, a glamorous actress whose beauty was matched only by her reputation for scandal. Her laugh, light and musical, filled the room as she chatted with Sir Reginald Thorne, a retired general whose weathered face spoke of battles fought and secrets kept. Finally, there was Dr. Evelyn Crane, a reclusive scholar of ancient texts, her nervous fingers clutching a silver locket as she hovered near the edge of the group. Poirot's gaze lingered on each guest, his mind cataloging their mannerisms, their glances, the subtle tensions that rippled beneath their polite facades. "The most interesting assembly," he murmured to Hastings. "Each one, I suspect, has a story to tell, and perhaps a secret to hide." Dinner was announced, and the group moved to the dining room, where a long table was set with gleaming silver and fine china. The meal was exquisite roast pheasant, truffled potatoes, and a claret that Hastings declared jolly good, but Poirot's attention was elsewhere. He watched as Victor teased Clara about her latest role, as Sir Reginald recounted a campaign in India with a hint of melancholy, and as Dr. Crane remained silent, her eyes darting to the windows as if expecting something or someone, as the dessert course was served. Lady Beatrice rose, her presence commanding silence. "My dear guests," she began, "you have been invited here for a purpose beyond mere socializing. Ravenwood Manor has a history, one steeped in mystery and, let us say, unconventional justice. Tomorrow, we shall embark on an experience that will test your wits and your hearts. I trust you are ready." Her words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Poirot's mustache twitched as he leaned forward. "Madame, you speak of a test? Might I inquire as to its nature?" Lady Beatrice's eyes gleamed. "Patience, Monsieur Poirot. All will be revealed. For now, enjoy the hospitality of Ravenwood." The conversation resumed, but the atmosphere had shifted, charged with an undercurrent of unease. Hastings, ever the optimist, attempted to lighten the mood with a story about a cricket match, but even he seemed subdued. As the guests retired to their rooms, Poirot lingered in the dining room, his fingers tracing the intricate carving on his chair. "Hastings," he said softly, "there is a pattern here, a design I cannot yet see, but it is there, woven into the very fabric of this place." They ascended the grand staircase to their rooms, the manor creaking around them like a living thing. Poirot's room was a study in luxury, a four-poster bed, a marble fireplace, and a window overlooking the moonlit gardens. As he prepared for bed, he noticed something on his pillow, a single red rose, its petals vibrant against the white linen. He picked it up, his fingers brushing against the thorns, which glistened with a strange, shimmering substance. "Hastings," he called, his voice sharp. His friend appeared at the door, still in his dinner jacket. "Regardez, this rosette is no ordinary flower." Hastings peered at it, his face paling. "Good Lord, Poirot, is that poison?" Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Perhaps, but more than that, it is a message, a warning, or perhaps an invitation. The game, mon ami, has begun." He placed the rose carefully on the bedside table, its thorns catching the light like tiny daggers, as Hastings bid him good night. Poirot sat at the desk, his mind racing. The letter, the guests, the rose, all were pieces of a puzzle, one that promised to challenge even his formidable intellect. He sipped his tisane, now cold, and murmured to himself, "Hercule Poirot does not refuse a challenge. Let us see what secrets Ravenwood holds." The manor settled into silence, but outside, the wind whispered through the oaks, carrying with it the promise of a mystery that would redefine crime itself. Chapter 2. The playwright's riddle. The dining hall of Ravenwood Manor gleamed under the soft glow of a dozen crystal chandeliers, their light refracting into tiny rainbows that danced across the polished mahogany table. The air was thick with the scent of roasted pheasant, mulled wine, and the faint, musky undertone of old money. Hercule Poirot, seated near the head of the table, adjusted his perfectly knotted tie and surveyed the assembled guests with the precision of a watchmaker. Each face, each gesture was a cog in the intricate mechanism of this peculiar evening, and Poirot's little gray cells were already worry, cataloging every detail. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever the loyal companion, sat to Poirot's right, his boyish enthusiasm barely contained as he leaned forward to inspect the silverware, as though it might reveal the secrets of the manor itself. "I say, Poirot," he whispered, "this place is positively dripping with mystery. Did you see the way that playwright fellow was staring at the actress? There's something brewing, mark my words." Poirot's mustache twitched, a subtle sign of amusement. "Mon ami, you see much, but you observe little." The stare of Monsieur Langley was not one of affection, but of calculation. And the actress, Mademoiselle Vane, she mirrors it with her own guarded glances. There is a history. There, I think, and not a pleasant one. Before Hastings could respond, the heavy oak doors at the far end of the hall swung open. And Lady Beatrice Ravenwood entered with the grace of a swan gliding across a still pond. Her gown, a deep emerald silk that shimmered like the poison-tipped rose Poirot had found on his pillow, commanded attention. Her dark hair was swept into an elegant chignon, and her eyes, sharp as cut glass, swept over the guests with a mixture of warmth and scrutiny. "Ladies and gentlemen," Ski began, her voice a melodic contralto that filled the room without effort. "Welcome to Ravenwood Manor. Tonight, we dine not merely to satisfy the body, but to nourish the mind. For what is a gathering without a touch of intrigue?" She paused, her lips curling into a smile that was equal parts inviting and enigmatic. "I have invited you here for a purpose, one that will unfold in due course. Adele, let us indulge in a game of riddle, if you will, crafted by our esteemed guest, Mr. Victor Langley." All eyes turned to the playwright, a lean man in his late 40s with a shock of silver-streaked hair and a face that seemed perpetually caught between a smirk and a scowl. Victor Langley rose, his movements deliberate, as though he was stepping onto a stage rather than addressing a dinner party. He held a slim manuscript in his hands, its pages yellowed at the edges, and his voice, when he spoke, carried the cadence of a man accustomed to commanding an audience. "My dear friends," Langley began, his tone laced with a theatrical flourish, "I have written a scene for your amusement to riddle, in the form of a play. It is called The Unseen Death, and it poses a question that I challenge you to answer. How does one commit a murder so subtle that the victim does not know they are dead until it is too late?" A murmur rippled through the guests. The retired General Sir Reginald Thorne, a bear of a man with a bristling mustache and a chest full of medals, snorted derisively. "Sounds like a lot of theatrical nonsense to me. Murder's a straightforward business knife, gun, or poison. No need for riddles." The glamorous actress, Clara Vane, arched a perfectly sculpted eyebrow, her crimson lips parting in a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Oh, General, you lack imagination. Murder can be as elegant as a sonnet if the mind behind it is clever enough." Her voice was like velvet, but there was a sharpness to it. A blade hidden in the folds. Poirot's gaze flicked between Langley and Clara, noting the tension that crackled between them like static electricity. He leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled, and waited for the performance to unfold. Langley cleared his throat and began to read, his voice rising and falling with the rhythm of a seasoned storyteller. The scene is set in a grand manner, much like this one. A man sits at a table, surrounded by friends, or so he believes. He sips his wine, savors his meal, and laughs at their jests. Yet, unbeknownst to him, his life is slipping away not through blood or violence, but through a silent, invisible force. The poison is not in his glass, nor in his food, but in the very air he breathes, in the words he hears, in the trust he places in those around him. When he rises from the table, he feels no pain, no fear. He retires to his room, content, and yet by morning he is dead, his heart stopped, his soul departed, without a single mark upon his body. The question, dear guest, is this: how was the murder committed? The room fell silent, the only sound the faint clink of silverware as Dr. Evelyn Crane, the reclusive scholar, set down her fork. Kay's hands trembled slightly, and Poirot's sharp eyes caught the glint of a locket at her throat, her fingers brushing against it as though seeking comfort. "A fascinating premise," she said, her voice soft but precise, like the ticking of a metronome. "But surely such a murder is impossible. The human body would react. There would be signs, symptoms. Langley's smile widened, a predator's grin. Would there, Dr. Crane? Could a mind cunning enough devise a method so subtle that even the victim's own senses betray them? Poirot's interest sharpened. The riddle was no mere parlor game. It was a gauntlet thrown down, a challenge to his intellect. He leaned forward, his voice cutting through the tension like a scalpel. Monsieur Langley, you speak of a poison that is not in the glass or the food, but in the air, the words, the trust. This suggests a crime not of the body, but of the mind. Yet you say the victim's heart stops. Is this a metaphor, or do you propose a literal poison, one so refined that it defies detection? Langley's eyes gleamed with approval, but there was something else there too, flicker of unease. You are perceptive, Monsieur Poirot. I will say only this. The poison is real, but its delivery is unlike anything you have encountered. Solve the riddle, and you may uncover a truth that will redefine crime itself. The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Hastings, ever impatient, leaned toward Poirot and muttered, "What's he on about? Some sort of gas, perhaps, or a psychological trick." Poirot did not respond immediately. His mind was elsewhere, replaying the details of the evening, the rose on his pillow, its thorns coated in a shimmering substance he had yet to identify. It's a cryptic letter that had summoned him here. Hey, and now this riddle, with its unsettling promise of an invisible death. He glanced at Lady Beatrice, who watched the exchange with the calm detachment of a chess master observing a game she had already won. The dinner proceeded. A tea, where the atmosphere had shifted. The guests, once jovial, now eyed one another with suspicion. Sir Reginald drained his wineglass with a defiant gulp, as though daring it to be poisoned. Clara Vane toyed with her necklace, her fingers tracing the sapphire pendant with a nervous energy. Dr. Crane's locket remained a focal point for Poirot. She clutched it again as Langley finished his reading, her eyes darting to the playwright with a mixture of fear and fascination. As the dessert course was served poached pears in a spiced syrup, Poirot excused himself, citing a need for air. In truth, he wanted to examine the rose he had found in his room, had carefully preserved it in a handkerchief, and now, the privacy of a small antechamber off the dining hall, he unwrapped it. The flower was exquisite, its petals a deep crimson, but it was the thorns that held his attention. The shimmering substance coated them like dew, catching the light in a way that seemed almost alive. Poirot produced a small magnifying glass from his pocket and studied the thorns closely. The substance was not merely a liquid. It had a crystalline quality, as though it had been distilled from something far more complex than ordinary poison. He recalled a case from years ago involving a rare toxin derived from South American plants, but this was different, more refined, more insidious. He needed to consult an expert, but for now he would keep this discovery to himself. Returning to the dining hall, Poirot found the guests engaged in a heated debate about Langley's riddle. Sir Reginald was adamant that the answer lay in a chemical weapon, drawing on his military experience. "I've seen gases that could kill a man without a trace," he boomed. The Germans were working on something like that in the war, colorless, odorless, deadly. Clara laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "And what, General? You think someone's pumping gas into this dining room? We'd all be dead by now, and you're still here, bellowing away." The General's face reddened, but before he could retort, Dr. Crane spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's not gas. It's something older, alchemical, perhaps. There are text-sanctioned ones that describe substances that can kill without detection. Order of the Saffron. Fail, for instance." She stopped abruptly, as though realizing she had said too much. Poirot's head snapped up. "It's the Order of the Saffron Veil, you say? It's an interesting reference, Mademoiselle Crane. Pray, tell us more." Dr. Crane's face paled, and she clutched her locket so tightly her knuckles whitened. "Nits," she stammered. "Just a legend I came across in my studies. A secret society, long disbanded, that experimented with poisons and other things." Lady Beatrice's smile did not waver, but her eyes narrowed slightly. "How fascinating, Evelyn. You must share more of your scholarly discoveries with us, but perhaps not tonight. Let us enjoy our dessert and ponder Mr. Langley's riddle." The conversation shifted, but Poirot's mind was racing. The Order of the Saffron Veil was no mere legend. He had heard whispers of it in his early years in Belgium. A shadowy group rumored to have mastered the art of undetectable murder. Could they be connected to the rose, the riddle, the letter? And why had Dr. Crane mentioned them so carelessly? As the evening drew to a close, the guests retired to their rooms. But Poirot lingered in the dining hall, his eyes fixed on the chandelier. Above, Hastings, ever loyal, stayed by his side. "What's on your mind, Poirot? You've got that look like a cat about to pounce." Poirot's lips curved into a faint smile. "Mon ami, the riddle of Monsieur Langley is no game. It is a warning, a blueprint for a crime that has not yet been committed, but will be, unless Hercule Poirot intervenes. The poison on the rose, the Order of the Saffron Veil, the tensions among these guests, they are all pieces of a puzzle. And I, Poirot, shall solve it before the curtain falls." Hastings shivered, though the room was warm. "You think someone's planning a murder here, tonight?" "Tonight, perhaps," Poirot replied, his voice low and measured. "But soon. The rose was a message, Hastings, and the riddle is its echo. We must be vigilant, for the unseen death is closer than we think." As they left the dining hall, Poirot's eyes lingered on the table, where a single red petal had fallen from a centerpiece, its edges curling like a warning. He tucked it into his pocket, a reminder that in Ravenwood Manor nothing was as it seemed. The night deepened, and Ravenwood Manor settled into an uneasy silence. Poirot returned to his room, where he placed the rose and the petal side by side. On his desk, he sat for hours, his mind a whirl of possibilities, each clue a thread in the tapestry of the mystery. The shimmering poison, the playwright's riddle, Dr. Crane's locket, the Order of the Saffron Veil, they were all connected. But how? He opened his notebook and began to sketch a diagram, linking names and motives. Victor Langley, with his theatrical flair and cryptic riddle, was hiding something, perhaps a past betrayal. Given his tense exchange with Clara Vane, Clara herself, their guarded smiles and threatening letters, was no innocent bystander. Dr. Crane's knowledge of alchemical poisons and her nervous demeanor suggested a deeper involvement. Sir Reginald's military past and Lady Beatrice's enigmatic presence could not be overlooked. And then there was the botanist, Mr. Percival Bloom, who had been conspicuously quiet during the dinner, his eyes fixed on his plate, as though it held the secrets of the universe. Poirot's pen paused as he considered the poison. Key had sent a sample to a trusted chemist in London earlier that day, using a discreet courier arranged by Hastings. The results would not arrive for another day, but Poirot was certain of one thing. The substance was no ordinary toxin. Its crystalline structure suggested a synthesis beyond the capabilities of most chemists, a creation that required both genius and malice. As the clock struck midnight, Poirot heard a faint sound, a soft creak, like a door being opened with care. He rose, his movements silent, and peered into the corridor. The manor was dark, save for a sliver of light spilling from beneath a door at the far end of the hall. It was Dr. Crane's room. Poirot hesitated, then returned to his desk. He would not confront her tonight. Better to let the players in this drama reveal themselves in their own time. But as he closed his notebook, he made a mental note to investigate Dr. Crane's locket further. Its contents, he suspected, held the key to her fear and, perhaps, to the riddle itself. The next morning, as the guests gathered for breakfast, Poirot's suspicions were confirmed. A maid, pale and trembling, approached Lady Beatrice with a small velvet box. Inside was another red rose, its thorns glistening with the same shimmering poison. The note attached read, simply, "The unseen death draws near." Poirot's eyes met Lady Beatrice's, and for a moment he saw a flicker of fear in her composed facade. The game, it seemed, was only beginning. Chapter 3. Shadows in the library. The air in Ravenwood Manor carried a peculiar weight that morning, as if the very walls were holding their breath. Hercule Poirot, clad in his impeccably tailored suit, stood at the threshold of the manor's library, his sharp eyes scanning the cavernous room. The library was a marvel of dark oak shelves that stretched to the vaulted ceiling, their surfaces groaning under the weight of leather-bound tomes and manuscripts yellowed by time. Dust motes danced in the slivers of sunlight, piercing the heavy velvet curtains, and the faint scent of aged paper mingled with something sharper, something metallic, almost medicinal. Poirot's mustache twitched as he registered the anomaly, his mind already sifting through possibilities. Captain Hastings, ever the faithful companion, trailed behind, his brow furrowed in that familiar mix of curiosity and unease. "I say, Poirot," he began, his voice echoing slightly in the vast space, "this place gives me the shivers. All these books, and not a single novel among them, I'd wager. Nothing but dusty old histories and scholarly nonsense." Poirot turned, his eyes glinting with amusement. "Mon ami, you underestimate the power of the written word. In a library such as this, there are secrets more thrilling than any novel. And secrets, Hastings, are the lifeblood of a crime." Hastings chuckled, though his eyes darted nervously to the shadows pooling in the corners. "Well, I hope these secrets don't come with the side of danger. That rose on your pillow last night, those thorns coated in that queer substance, it's enough to make a man jumpy." Poirot's expression grew serious, his fingers brushing the lapel of his coat where he had tucked the red rose, now safely stored in a small glass vial in his room. The shimmering substance on his thorns had been identified by a local chemist, summoned discreetly by Poirot as a rare poison derived from a South American plant, known for its near undetectable properties. It was not the poison itself that intrigued Poirot, but the audacity of its placement a silent challenge to his intellect. "Come, Hastings," Poirot said, stepping deeper into the library. "Let us explore. The mind of the criminal is like a book, and this library may hold the first chapter of our mystery." The library was a labyrinth of knowledge, its shelves organized not by subject, but by some inscrutable system known only to the late Lord Ravenwood, Lady Beatrice's father. Poirot's gaze swept over the titles treatises on alchemical transmutation, the Codex of Forgotten Rituals, Poisons of the New World, each one a potential clue. He paused at a particularly worn volume, its spine cracked, and its title barely legible, Ars Venenum, The Art of Poison. His fingers hovered over it, but a faint rustling sound from the far end of the room drew his attention. There, seated at a heavy oak table, was Dr. Evelyn Crane, the reclusive scholar whose nervous demeanor at dinner the previous night had not escaped Poirot's notice. Her dark hair was pulled back severely, and her spectacles glinted as she bent over a manuscript, her fingers trembling slightly as they traced the faded ink. She had not yet noticed Poirot and Hastings, so absorbed was she in her work. Poirot motioned for Hastings to remain silent and approached with his characteristic measured grace. "Bonjour, Dr. Crane," he said softly, his voice carrying just enough warmth to avoid startling her. Dr. Crane's head snapped up, her eyes wide behind her spectacles. The locket she had been clutching the previous evening dangled from her neck, catching the light. "Monsieur Poirot," she exclaimed, her voice a touch too shrill. I didn't hear you come in. This library is overwhelming, is it not?" "Indeed," Poirot replied, his tone genial, but his eyes sharp. "It is a treasure trove of knowledge, and you, I see, are delving into its depths. May I inquire? What fascinates you so?" Dr. Crane hesitated, her fingers brushing the manuscript protectively. "Oh, just some research. I'm studying alchemical texts, purely academic, of course. The history of science is my field, and Ravenwood's collection is unparalleled." Poirot nodded, his smile polite but probing. "Alchemical texts, you say? A curious choice, given the events of last night. The rose, the poison. One might wonder if your studies are purely theoretical." Her face paled, and she clutched the locket again, her knuckles whitening. "I assure you, Monsieur Poirot, I have no interest in poisons beyond their historical context. This manuscript," she gestured to the open page, its edges frayed, and its text adorned with intricate symbols. "It's about the alchemical pursuit of eternal life, not death." Poirot leaned closer, his eyes scanning the manuscript. The page was filled with cryptic diagrams, spirals, crosses, and what appeared to be a stylized rose encircled by thorns. "Fascinating," he murmured. "And yet, the rose on my pillow suggests someone in this manner has a more practical interest in such matters." Before Dr. Crane could respond, a piercing scream shattered the library's stillness. Hastings spun toward the sound, his hand instinctively reaching for a weapon he did not carry. "Good Lord, what was that?" he gasped. Poirot was already moving, his small frame surprisingly swift as he navigated the maze of shelves toward the source of the scream. Dr. Crane followed. Came manuscript forgotten, and Hastings brought up the rear, muttering about the cursed place. They found Lady Beatrice's maid, Elsie, standing near a secluded alcove, her face ashen and her hands trembling as she pointed to a hidden panel in the wall. The panel, cunningly disguised as part of the shelving, had swung open to reveal a small compartment. Inside gleamed a glass vial, its contents shimmering with the same eerie luminescence as the poison on the rose. "Monsieur," Poirot murmured, stepping forward to examine the vial without touching it. The compartment was lined with velvet, and beside the vial lay a single sheet of parchment, its edges curling as if it had been hastily stuffed inside. Elsie's voice quavered as she spoke. "I was dusting, sir, and I leaned against the shelf, and it just opened. I didn't mean to find it, I swear." Poirot's eyes softened, though his mind was racing. "Calm yourself, mademoiselle. You have done well to alert us. Tell me, have you seen anyone near this alcove today?" Elsie shook her head, her eyes wide. "No, sir, but this library is so big, and there are so many shadows. Someone could have been here, and I'd never know." Poirot nodded, dismissing her gently. "Return to your duties, Elsie, and speak of this to no one. As Elsie scurried away, Hastings leaned in, his voice low. "Poirot, this is getting serious. First, the rose. Now this violet's the same poison, isn't it? Almost." "Certainly," Poirot replied, his gaze fixed on the vial. "But the question, Hastings, is not what, but why? Why place such a dangerous substance here, where it might be found? It is a provocation, a test." Dr. Crane, who had been silent, stepped forward, her voice steadier now. "Monsieur Poirot, if I may, this compartment, it's not random. Manuscript, I was studying it, mentioned hidden caches in old libraries, used by alchemists to store their most dangerous concoctions. This could be one of them." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And yet, you did not mention this earlier, Dr. Crane. A curious omission, Nan." Her cheeks flushed, and she looked away. I didn't think it relevant. It's just a historical curiosity. Poirot did not press her further, but his mind catalogued her reaction. He turned to the parchment, carefully extracting it with a handkerchief. The text was written in a precise, almost mechanical hand, and it consisted of a single line. The saffron veil conceals the truth, but the rose reveals it. Hastings frowned. The saffron veil. What the deuce does that mean? Poirot's lips curved into a faint smile. It is a clue, mon ami, a name perhaps, or a symbol, and the rose. Always the rose. It is the key to this mystery, I am certain. The library seemed to grow darker as they stood there, the weight of the discovery pressing down on them. Poirot's mind churned, piecing together the fragments. The poison, the rose, the cryptic message, Dr. Crane's nervous demeanor. But another figure loomed in his thoughts, Sir Reginald Thorne, the retired general whose military background included knowledge of chemical warfare. At dinner the previous night, Sir Reginald had spoken of his time in the Great War, his voice tinged with regret as he described experiments with gases that had left men writhing in agony. Could he be connected to this poison? Poirot decided to seek out the general, but as he turned to leave the alcove, a faint click echoed from the shelves behind them. He froze, his senses alert. "Hastings," he whispered. "Do you hear that?" Hastings nodded, his hand hovering near his pocket. "Someone's here." Poirot moved silently, his eyes scanning the shadows. The library was a maze, its aisles twisting and turning, offering countless hiding places. He gestured for Hastings and Dr. Crane to follow, keeping his steps light. As they rounded a corner, they caught a glimpse of a figure, tall, broad-shouldered man in a dark coat, slipping through a side door that led to the manor's gardens. "After him," Hastings exclaimed, but Poirot held up a hand. "No, Hastings. We do not chase shadows. We observe, we deduce. God Dorrit leads to the greenhouse, where Mr. Bloom spends his days." "Interesting, Nan." Dr. Crane's voice was barely audible. "Greenhouse. It's full of rare plants. Some could be used to make poisons." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Precisement, but let us not rush to conclusions. First, we must speak with Sir Reginald. His knowledge of poisons may shed light on this discovery." They found Sir Reginald in the drawing room, polishing a set of antique medals with a cloth. His weathered face, lined with the scars of war, betrayed no hint of deception, but Poirot knew better than to trust appearances. "Sir Reginald," he began, his tone conversational, "you have experience with chemical agents, I understand. Tell me, have you ever encountered a poison that shimmers like liquid silver?" The general's hand paused mid-motion, his eyes meeting Poirot's. For a moment, there was a flicker of something's fear, perhaps, or recognition. "I've seen many things in my time, Monsieur Poirot," he said gruffly. "Up a poison like that? No. The ones I dealt with were crude, brutal, nothing so elegant." Poirot noted the hesitation, the careful choice of words, and yet such a poison has been found in this very manner. In the library, no less, hidden in a compartment. That suggests deliberate intent. Sir Reginald's face drained of color, his medals clattering to the table. In the library. "God, man, are you saying someone's planning to use it?" Poirot's voice was calm, but his eyes were unrelenting. "I am saying, Sir Reginald, that someone in this manner knows more than they admit. And I intend to find out who." The general's shock seemed genuine, but Poirot's mind was already elsewhere. Replaying the scene in the library, Dr. Crane's trembling hands, the cryptic message, the fleeting figure in the shadows. The pieces were beginning to form a pattern, but it was incomplete, like a jigsaw puzzle missing its final piece as they left the drawing room. Hastings whispered, "Do you think Sir Reginald's involved, Poirot?" He looked like he'd seen A ghost. Poirot's lips twitched. Perhaps he has, Hastings. Or perhaps he fears becoming one. But fear not, we are only at the beginning of this puzzle. The library has given us a clue, and now we must follow it. Back in the library, Poirot returned to the manuscript Dr. Crane had been studying. He opened it to the page she had been reading, his fingers tracing the symbols. There, tucked between the pages, was another piece of parchment. This one bearing a coded message in a different hand. The veil watches. The rose bleeds. Trust no one. Poirot's heart quickened, though his face remained impassive. The saffron, veil, the rose, the Whodunit was all connected. A web of intrigue spun by a mastermind who delighted in riddles. But who? Lady Beatrice, with her enigmatic smiles. Dr. Crane, with her hidden knowledge. Sir Reginald, with his haunted past. Or someone else entirely, lurking in the shadows of Ravenwood Manor. Chapter 4. The actresses masquerade. The heavy velvet curtains of Ravenwood Manor's theater parted with a slow, deliberate rustle, revealing a stage bathed in the golden glow of flickering footlights. Hercule Poirot sat in the third row, his small, fastidious frame upright, his eyes gleaming with the alertness of a hawk. Beside him, Captain Hastings fidgeted, his program crumpled in his hands, his attention torn between the stage and the peculiar assembly of guests around him. The air was thick with anticipation, scented with the faint musk of old wood and the sharp attempts of nervous excitement. The glamorous actress, Clara Vane, stood center stage, her auburn hair catching the light like a halo of fire. She wore a gown of emerald silk that shimmered with every movement, its low neckline and flowing train commanding the room's attention. Her voice, rich and melodious, carried the opening lines of a scene from The Mask of Virtue, a play Poirot recognized as one of Victor Langley's lesser-known works. The choice was no coincidence, Poirot thought, his fingers steepled beneath his chin. Langley, the playwright, sat in the front row, his lean frame slouched, his eyes fixed on Clara with an intensity that spoke of more than professional interest. Betrayal, Clara declared, her voice rising to fill the theater, is a wound that festers in silence, is poison seeping into the soul. She paused, her gaze sweeping the audience, lingering on Poirot for a fraction of a second longer than necessary. But what is a betrayer, if not a mirror held to our own flaws? Poirot's lips twitched into a faint smile. Clara Vane was no mere performer. She was a master of subtext, weaving layers of meaning into every word. The script was a vehicle for something deeper, something personal. He glanced at Hastings, who was engrossed, oblivious to the undercurrents Poirot sensed. The scene unfolded. Clara, playing a wronged noblewoman, confronted her lover, a character portrayed by a nervous young footman drafted for the role. The dialogue was sharp, laced with accusations of infidelity and deceit. But it was the prop dagger in Clara's hand that drew Poirot's attention. It gleamed too brightly, its edge too sharp for a theatrical prop. As the scene reached its climax, Clara raised the dagger, her movements graceful yet charged with menace. The footman, stumbling over his lines, recoiled as she launched in a choreographed strike, but the blade caught the light in a way that made Poirot's heart skip. He leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. The dagger was real. Before he could act, Clara's arm faltered, the blade grazing the footman's sleeve instead of striking the padded costume. A gasp rippled through the audience, and the footman staggered back, his face pale. "Mon Dieu," Poirot murmured, rising swiftly. "Hastings, with me." The theater erupted into chaos. Clara dropped the dagger, her hands trembling, her face a mask of shock. Lady Beatrice Ravenwood, seated in an ornate chair to the side, stood, her voice cutting through the clamor. Enough. Everyone remained calm. This was a mistake, nothing more. Poirot reached the stage in a few brisk strides, his polished shoes clicking on the polished wood. He knelt beside the fallen dagger, careful not to touch it, and examined its blade. The metal was honed to a razor's edge, its handle engraved with a delicate pattern of vines afar, cry from the blunt, painted props, typical of amateur productions. He straightened, his mustache quivering with indignation. "A mistake, madame. Ravenwood Nan. This is no mistake. This is an attempt at harm, perhaps murder." Clara, still trembling, clutched the folds of her gown. "I swear, Monsieur Poirot, I didn't know. The prop was switched high. Checked it myself this morning." Poirot's eyes, sharp as cut glass, studied her. Her distress seemed genuine, but he had seen many a fine performance in his time. "Mademoiselle Vane, you will tell me everything." But first he turned to the footman, who was being helped to his feet by Sir Reginald Thorne, the retired general. "You young man, are you injured?" The footman, a lanky youth named Thomas, shook his head, his voice unsteady. "No, sir. Just shaken. The blade didn't touch me, but it was close." Poirot nodded, his mind racing. The dagger was no accident. Someone had placed it in Clara's hand, knowing the scene called for a dramatic strike. But why? To harm the footman? An unlikely target. Or to implicate Clara, to cast suspicion on her. The possibilities swirled in his little gray cells, each demanding scrutiny. Lady Beatrice clapped her hands, her composure restored. "Let us retire to the drawing room. This performance is over. Monsieur Poirot, I trust you will get to the bottom of this." "Bean, sir," Poirot replied, his tone clipped. "I always do." In the drawing room, the guests gathered uneasily, their faces a gallery of suspicion and unease. The fire crackled in the hearth, casting long shadows across the room's oak-paneled walls. Clara sat on a velvet settee, her hands clasped tightly, her eyes darting to Victor Langley, who stood by the window, his back to the group. Dr. Evelyn Crane, the reclusive scholar, sat apart, her locket clutched in her hand, her expression unreadable. Sir Reginald paced near the fireplace, his military bearing at odds with the nervous energy in his steps. Mr. Percival Bloom, the botanist, hovered near a potted fern, his fingers absently brushing its leaves. Hastings, ever loyal, stood by Poirot, his notebook open, ready to jot down observations. Poirot began his inquiry with Clara, his voice gentle but firm. "Mademoiselle Vane, you say the dagger was checked this morning? By whom?" "By me," Clara said, her voice steadying. "I always inspect my props." The dagger was wooden, painted silver. "I don't know how it was switched, and where was it kept before the performance?" "In the prop room, behind the stage. It's locked, but," she hesitated, glancing at Victor, "key is kept in a drawer in the theater office. Anyone could have taken it." Poirot's eyes followed her glance. "Monsieur Langley, you wrote the play. Did you select the props for this scene?" Victor turned, his face pale but composed. "I suggested the dagger, yes, its symbolic a nod to the theme of betrayal. But I didn't handle the props. That was Clara's responsibility." Clara's eyes flashed. "You're quick to point fingers, Victor. You've been in and out of the prop room all day, haven't you?" The room tensed. Poirot raised a hand, silencing the brewing argument. "Enough, mademoiselle. You mentioned earlier that you have received threatening letters. Tell me about them." Clara's shoulders slumped, and she reached into a small reticule, producing a folded piece of paper. "This is the latest. It's arrived this morning." She handed it to Poirot, who unfolded it with care. The handwriting was elegant, almost calligraphic, but the words were venomous. "Your betrayal will not be forgotten. The stage is set for your reckoning." Poirot read the note aloud, his voice calm but commanding attention. "This is no idle threat, Mies Amos. The dagger, the letter, They are connected. Someone wishes to harm Mademoiselle Vane, or to make it appear so. He turned to Clara. You have enemies, perhaps. A rival, a spurned admirer. Clara's lips tightened. I'm an actress, Monsieur Poirot. Envy comes with the profession. But this, she gestured to the note. This feels personal. I suspect Victor knows more than he's letting on. Victor's face darkened. That's absurd, Clara. If anyone's hiding something, it's you. You've been dodging questions about your past ever since we arrived. Poirot's eyes gleamed. And what past is this, Monsieur Langley? Enlighten us. Victor hesitated, then spoke, his voice low. Clara and I were involved years ago. Before she became the darling of the West End, there was a scandal production that failed because she abandoned it, and me, to chase fame in London. I lost everything. Clara stood, her voice trembling with anger. You lost everything because you couldn't write a decent play, Victor. Don't blame me for your failures. The room fell silent, the weight of their shared history palpable. Poirot's mind whirred, piecing together the fragments, the threatening letter, the real dagger. The history between Clara and Victorette was a tapestry of motives, but one thread stood out, the coded message he had found in the library, tucked inside Dr. Crane's manuscript. It had mentioned a betrayer and bore the same elegant script as Clara's letter. Dr. Crane, Poirot said, turning to the scholar, who started at the sound of her name. You were in the library yesterday, studying a manuscript about alchemical poisons. Did you, perhaps, come across any correspondence? Dr. Crane's fingers tightened around her locket. I don't know what you mean, Monsieur Poirot. I was researching. Nothing more. Poirot's smile was thin. And yet, you clutch that locket as if it holds a secret. Perhaps it does. Dr. Crane's face paled, but she said nothing. Poirot let the silence hang, knowing it would unsettle her. He turned back to Clara. Mademoiselle, you will show me the prop room. I must see where this dagger was kept. The prop room was a cluttered space behind the theater. Its shelves lined with costumes, wigs, and assorted theatrical paraphernalia. A single bulb cast a dim light, revealing a wooden chest where the props for the Mask of Virtue were stored. Clara unlocked it, revealing a jumble of item swords, goblets, a crown, all clearly artificial. The wooden dagger she claimed to have checked was there, its paint chipped but unmistakable. It was here this morning, Clara insisted. I swear it. Poirot examined the lock on the chest. It was simple, easily picked with a hairpin or a small tool. He turned to the door of the prop room, noting its flimsy latch. Anyone with access to the theater could have entered, he said. But the question is, who knew the dagger would be used tonight? Only the cast and crew, Clara said. And Victor, of course. He was there when we rehearsed the scene. Poirot nodded, his mind returning to the coded message. He had deciphered part of it in the library, a series of numbers and letters that, when translated, formed the phrase, "The betrayer falls." The script matched the letter's handwriting, and now, it seemed, the dagger's intended target was Clara. But why? Was it revenge for her past with Victor, or something deeper, tied to the secret society hinted at in the manuscript? As they left the prop room, Poirot noticed a small object glinting on the floor, a hairpin, its tip bent as if used to pick a lock. He pocketed it, saying nothing to Clara. Back in the drawing room, he gathered the guests once more, his demeanor calm, but authoritative. Mies, Amos, he began. The dagger was no accident. It was placed to harm or to accuse. Mademoiselle Vane, you are at the center of this storm, but I suspect you are not the only target. The letter, the dagger, the coded message, they point to a larger design, one that involves this manor and its secrets. Lady Beatrice, who had been silent, spoke up. Monsieur Poirot, you speak of secrets, but Ravenwood is an open book. My guests are here for a weekend of entertainment, nothing more. Poirot's eyes twinkled. An open book. Madame Nan Ravenwood is a labyrinth, and I intend to find its heart. But for now, I require one thing, the truth. Mademoiselle Vane, you will tell me everything about your past with Monsieur Langley. And Dr. Crane, you will open that locket. Dr. Crane's hand flew to her throat, but before she could protest, a loud crash echoed from the hallway. Hastings rushed to investigate, returning with a grim expression. It's the theater, Poirot. Someone set fire to the stage. The guests surged toward the theater, where smoke billowed from the curtains. Sir Reginald and Thomas, the footmen, grabbed buckets from the kitchen, dousing the flames before they could spread. Poirot, however, remained at the edge of the stage, his eyes scanning the debris. Amid the charred remnants of a backdrop, he found a second coded message, its paper singed but legible. It read, "The Saffron Veil watches. Tear will burn." Poirot's heart quickened. The Saffron Veil, the name from the manuscript, the secret society tied to the poison in the manor. The fire was no accident. It was a warning, or perhaps a distraction. He turned to Clara, who stood trembling, her eyes wide with fear. "Mademoiselle," he said softly, "you are in grave danger. Fear not, Hercule Poirot will protect you, and he will uncover the truth." Chapter 5. The General's Confession. The air in Ravenwood Manor hung heavy with suspicion, as if the very walls were complicit in the secrets they harbored. Hercule Poirot, his mustache impeccably trimmed and his eyes sharp as ever, sat in the drawing-room, observing the guests with the precision of a watchmaker. The events of the past days, the cryptic invitation, the playwright's unsettling riddle, the discovery of the shimmering poison, in the coded messages had woven a tapestry of intrigue that demanded his full attention. Captain Hastings, ever the loyal companion, sat beside him, his brow furrowed as he tried to keep pace with Poirot's rapid deductions. The morning had begun with a peculiar stillness, broken only by the clink of teacups and the murmur of uneasy conversation among the guests. Lady Beatrice Ravenwood, the manor's enigmatic hostess, presided over breakfast with her usual grace, but Poirot noted the faint tremor in her hand as she poured tea. The playwright, Victor Langley, was uncharacteristically quiet, his usual flair subdued. Clara Vane, the glamorous actress, laughed too loudly at a jest no one else found amusing, while Dr. Evelyn Crane, the reclusive scholar, kept her eyes fixed on her plate, her locket clutched tightly in her hand. Sir Reginald Thorne, the retired general, sat ramrod straight, his military bearing unshaken despite the undercurrent of tension. Poirot's mind was a whirl of details. The red rose with its poisoned thorns, the alchemical manuscript, the hidden vial in the library. Each clue was a thread in a complex web, and he was determined to find the spider at its center. Okay, but it was Sir Reginald who drew his attention now. The general's stern demeanor had cracked ever so slightly during the previous evening's discussion of the poison, his eyes flickering with something Poirot recognized as guilt. It was time, Poirot decided, to apply gentle pressure to that crack. "Mon ami," Poirot said to Hastings, his voice low, "observe the general. He carries a burden, Nan, a secret that weighs upon him like a stone. Today we shall see if it can be dislodged." Hastings nodded, though his expression betrayed his confusion. "You think he's involved in this poison business?" "Perhaps," Poirot replied, his eyes narrowing. Yet Poirot does not leap to conclusions. He observes, he listens, and he thinks. The general knows more than he has said, and that, my friend, is where we begin. The opportunity came after breakfast, when the guests dispersed to the manor's various rooms. Poirot found Sir Reginald in the billiard room, alone, staring at a portrait of a stern-faced ancestor adorned with military medals. The general's hands were clasped behind his back. Poirot noted the faint tremor in his fingers. General Thorne, Poirot began, his tone polite but firm. A word, if you please. Sir Reginald turned, his weathered face betraying a flicker of unease. Mr. Poirot, he said gruffly. What is it? I have no patience for games. Nor I, Poirot replied, stepping closer. But I am a man who seeks the truth, and I believe you have a truth to share. It's the poison, General, the shimmering substance we found in the library. It is not unknown to you, is it? The General's jaw tightened, and for a moment, Poirot thought he might deny it. But then, with a sigh that seemed to carry the weight of decades, Sir Reginald sank into a leather armchair. You're a perceptive man, Poirot, he said. Perceptive, perhaps. Yes, I know of the poison, something like it. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Tell me, General, what is this something like it? Here. Reginald's gaze drifted to the window, where the manicured lawns of Ravenwoods stretched toward the horizon. It was during the war, he began, his voice low. A dark time, Mr. Poirot. We were desperate, you understand? The enemy was relentless, and our resources were stretched thin. I was tasked with overseeing a special project, a chemical weapon, experimental, designed to be undetectable. It shimmered like liquid starlight, and it was lethal in the smallest doses. We called it Ether's Kiss. Poirot leaned forward, his hands folded neatly. And this Ether's Kiss was used. Sir Reginald's face darkened. It was once a single test in a remote village. The results were catastrophic. Entire families gone in hours with no trace of the cause. No odor, no residue, nothing. The project was shut down, the remaining vials destroyed, or so I was told. And yet, Poirot said, his voice soft but piercing, here we are, in Ravenwood Manor, with a vial of a shimmering poison that matches your description. How do you explain this, General? I can't, Sir Reginald admitted, his voice breaking. I swear to you, Poirot, I thought it was gone. I left that life behind. I've spent years trying to atone for what I did. Poirot studied the man, noting the sincerity in his eyes. But sincerity, he knew, could be a mask. Mercy, General, he said, rising. Your confession is noted. Poirot must ask, where were you last night between the hours of midnight and 2? Sir Reginald blinked, caught off guard. I was in my room, asleep. Why do you ask? Poirot did not answer, merely offering a polite smile. We shall speak again, General. Bonjour. As Poirot left the billiard room, his mind was already turning over the General's words. Ether's kiss of poison from a war long ended, now resurfacing in a secluded manner. The coincidence was too great, and Poirot did not believe in coincidences. He needed more information, and he knew where to find it. The greenhouse, where the eccentric botanist Percival Bloom spent his days, was a logical next step. The poison was being synthesized, as Poirot suspected. The greenhouse's exotic plants might hold the key. He found Bloom tending to a row of vibrant, unfamiliar flowers, their petals glistening with an unnatural sheen. Mr. Bloom, Poirot said, his tone genial, your garden is most impressive. Tell me, these plants, they are not native to England, Nan? Bloom, a wiry man with a perpetual squint, looked up from his work. No, Mr. Poirot, these are rare specimens collected from the jungles of South America. Beautiful, but deadly. If mishandled, deadly, you say? Poirot's eyes twinkled. Capable, perhaps, of producing a poison that shimmers like starlight. Bloom froze, his trowel hovering over a pot. I don't know what you mean, he stammered. Do you not? Poirot stepped closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Come, Mr. Bloom. Poirot is not a man to be trifled with. The poison found in the library, it is no stranger to this greenhouse, is it? Before Bloom could respond, a piercing scream shattered the stillness. Poirot and Bloom rushed toward the sound, which came from the manor's central hall. There, they found Clara Vane, her face pale, pointing to the floor. At her feet lay Percival Bloom's assistant, a young man named Thomas, unconscious, his lips tinged with a faint shimmer. "Mon Dieu!" Poirot exclaimed, kneeling beside the man. He checked Thomas's pulse, weak but present, quickly. "Fetch Dr. Crane," he ordered, and Bloom scrambled to obey. As the guests gathered, Poirot examined Thomas closely. The shimmer on his lips matched the poison from the library, and a quick search revealed a small vial in his pocket, half empty. Dr. Crane arrived, her medical bag in hand, and set to work stabilizing the young man. "He's been poisoned," she confirmed, her voice steady but strained, "but I can counteract it if we act quickly." Poirot watched her work, noting the efficiency of her movements. "You are familiar with this poison, Dr. Crane?" he asked. She hesitated, then nodded. "I've studied alchemical toxins. This one is rare, but I know the antidote. He'll survive, but he needs rest." As Thomas was carried to his room, Poirot's mind raced. The poison was no longer a theoretical threat, whereas active, and someone in the manor was wielding it. But why? And why now? The day wore on, with the guests retreating to their rooms, their nerves frayed. Poirot, however, was undeterred. He returned to the greenhouse, determined to uncover its secrets. There, among the exotic plants, he found a hidden compartment in a workbench, containing a notebook filled with chemical formulas. The handwriting was precise, almost clinical, and the entries detailed the synthesis of ether's kiss using the yeast sap of a rare orchid. "Voila," Poirot murmured, slipping the notebook into his pocket. "The spider's web grows clearer." But the clarity was short-lived. As evening fell, the manor was plunged into darkness. A sudden blackout silenced the hum of electricity, and the guests' murmurs turned to cries of alarm. Poirot, ever.com, lit a candle and navigated the darkened halls, his senses heightened. He found Hastings in the drawing room, clutching a poker for defense. "Hastings, mon ami," Poirot said, his voice steady, "remain calm. This is no accident. Someone wishes to hide their actions in the shadows." As the lights flickered back on, a new horror greeted them. Percival Bloom lay sprawled on the drawing room floor, unconscious, his lips shimmering with the same poison that had struck Thomas. The guests gathered, their faces a mix of fear and accusation. Clara Vane clutched Victor Langley's arm, whispering fiercely, while Sir Reginald stood apart, his expression unreadable. Dr. Crane knelt beside Bloom, ministering the same antidote she had used on Thomas. "He'll live," she said, her voice tight. "But we must find the source of this poison before someone else is hurt." Poirot's eyes swept the room, taking in every detail: the way Clara's fingers trembled, the way Victor avoided his gaze, the way Lady Beatrice watched from the doorway, her face a mask of composure. "It's the source, Dr. Crane," he said. "It's closer than you think, and Poirot will find it." He turned to Bloom, who was stirring, his eyes fluttering open. "It's to Bloom," Poirot said, his tone commanding. "You will tell me, now, where is the poison being made, and who is responsible?" Bloom coughed, his voice weak. I don't know. I swear it." "The orchids. Someone's been using my plants, but it's not me." Poirot's gaze hardened. "Then who?" "Mr. Bloom." "Who has access to your greenhouse?" Bloom hesitated, his eyes darting to the guests. "Anyone could have," he whispered. "The door is never locked." The admission hung in the air, a damning truth. The poison could be the work of any of them or all of them. Poirot's mind churned, piecing together the clues. The general's confession, the greenhouse's secrets, a coded messages all pointed to a conspiracy that went beyond a single murderer. But the final piece of the puzzle came unexpectedly. As the guests dispersed, Poirot lingered in the drawing room, examining the scene. On the floor, near where Bloom had fallen, he found a small, crumpled note. It read, "The Veil watches. Trust no one." Poirot's lips curved into a faint smile. "The Order of the Saffron Veil," he murmured. "They are here, and they are bold. But Hercule Poirot is bolder still." He tucked the note into his pocket, his resolve strengthened. The poison was being synthesized in the greenhouse, that much was clear. But the orchestrator, the spider at the center of the web, remained hidden. Poirot knew he was close, but the danger was closer still. The chapter closed with him standing alone in the candlelit drawing room, smiling a whirlwind of deduction, determined to unmask the culprit before the next strike. Chapter 6. The Garden of Secrets. The air at Ravenwood Manor hung heavy with the scent of damp earth and blooming roses as Hercule Poirot stepped into the greenhouse. Its glass walls misted with condensation. The morning sun filtered through the panes, casting a dappled glow over rows of exotic plants, their leaves glistening with an almost unnatural vitality. The greenhouse, a sprawling cathedral of glass and iron, stood apart from the manor's Gothic austerity, a verdant sanctuary that seemed to pulse with secrets. Poirot's polished shoes clicked softly on the stone path, and Captain Hastings trailed behind, his brow furrowed, his usual jovial demeanor subdued by the mounting tension of their stay. "Mon ami," Poirot said, pausing to inspect a cluster of vibrant purple flowers with delicate needle-like thorns. "Do you not find it curious that a botanist, Mr. Percival Bloom, should choose to seclude himself in such a place, surrounded by plants that could kill with a mere prick?" Hastings, adjusting his tie as if it might ward off the greenhouse's humid embrace, replied, "Curious? I'd say it's downright suspicious, Poirot. After that business with the poison and Bloom collapsing last night, I'd wager he's up to no good, probably brewing that wretched stuff himself." Poirot's mustache twitched, a subtle sign of amusement. "Suspicion, Hastings, is a blunt instrument. We must wield the scalpel of observation. Observe, for instance, the care with which these plants are tended. Each pot is labeled, each vine trained with precision. This is the work of a man obsessed not with malice, perhaps, but with knowledge." The greenhouse was a labyrinth of flora, its aisles lined with plants both beautiful and deadly. There were belladonna with its glossy black berries, foxgloves drooping under their own weight, and strange, spiky specimens Poirot could not name, their leaves shimmering with a faint iridescence. He paused before a tray of small, saffron-colored flowers, their petals curling inward like secretive whispers. A label read, "Crocus sativus venenum," and Poirot's eyes narrowed. Saffron, but not the kind used in bouillabaisse. This was something far more sinister. As they ventured deeper, the air grew warmer, thick with the scent of soil and decay. Hastings mopped his brow with a handkerchief. "Good Lord, Poirot, it's like a jungle in here. How does Bloom stand?" "It, perhaps," Poirot mused. "He finds solace in the company of those who cannot betray him. Plants, unlike people, do not lie though they may conceal." He stopped abruptly, his gaze fixed on a workbench tucked in a corner. It was cluttered with vials, mortar, and a leather-bound journal, its pages yellowed and curling. A glass pipette lay discarded beside a beaker containing a shimmering liquid, the same substance Poirot had identified on the rose in his room. "Voila," he murmured, lifting the journal with gloved hands. "The heart of the matter, perhaps?" Before he could open it, the greenhouse door creaked, and Percival Bloom shuffled in, his gaunt frame stooped, his eyes darting like a cornered animal's. His tweed jacket was stained with soil, and his hands trembled as he clutched a pair of pruning shears. "Mr. Poirot, Captain Hastings," he exclaimed, his voice a mix of surprise and alarm. "I didn't expect anyone here so early." Poirot's smile was disarming, but his eyes were sharp. "Monsieur Bloom, it is precisely the early hour that reveals the truth. The greenhouse, it is your domain, Nan. I am most curious about your work. These plants, they are not merely decorative, I think." Bloom's Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed. "They're research specimens, rare varieties, collected over years. I studied their properties, medicinal, mostly." His eyes flicked to the journal in Poirot's hands, and he took a step forward. "That's private, sir. My notes." "Nothing of interest to a detective." "Nothing of interest." Poirot's tone was light, but there was steel beneath it. "Yet I find a vial of poison, the very same that nearly claimed your life last night, resting beside your notes. A coincidence, perhaps?" Bloom's face paled, and he dropped the shears with a clatter. "Swear I didn't tie, wasn't." He faltered, then sank onto a stool, his hands covering his face. "You don't understand. It's not what it seems." "Then," Monsieur Poirot said, seating himself on a nearby bench, the journal still in hand, "enlighten me." Hercule Poirot does not judge without evidence, but he does not ignore it either. Hastings, standing by the door as if guarding against interruption, muttered, "Better start talking. Bloom, you're in deep." Bloom's shoulders slumped, and after a long pause, he began. "Years ago, I was part of a group of society, you might call it. They called themselves the Order of the Saffron Veil. Scholars, scientists, visionaries, or so I thought. They believed they could redefine justice, create a world where crime was undetectable, untraceable. They studied poisons, not to kill, but to control fear, minds, even destinies." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "In this poison, the one that shimmers like starlight, it is their creation." Bloom nodded, his voice barely a whisper. "Helped develop it. A derivative of saffron, altered through alchemical processes. Okay? It's slow, subtle, induces paranoia, confusion, even death, without leaving a trace. But I left the order when I saw what they intended. I came to Ravenwood to escape, to study in peace. I thought they'd forgotten me. But they have not," Poirot said, flipping open the journal. Its pages were filled with meticulous notes, diagrams of plants, and chemical formulas interspersed with cryptic references to the veil and the reckoning. One entry caught his eye. "The rose is the key. Its thorns deliver judgment." Poirot's finger traced the words, his mind racing. "This journal, it is not merely a record of your work, it is a confession." Bloom's eyes widened. "No, I kept it to protect myself, to prove I'd left them. If they found me, I'd show I'd abandoned their cause." Yet Poirot said, closing the journal, "Someone has brought their cause to Ravenwood. The rose in my room, the poison in the library, your collapses are not accidents. The order is here, monsieur, and you are entangled, willingly or not." Before Bloom could respond, a sharp rap at the greenhouse door startled them. Lady Beatrice Ravenwood swept in, her silk gown rustling like autumn leaves. Her presence was commanding, her dark eyes scanning the scene with an intensity that belied her gracious smile. "Mr. Poirot, Captain Hastings, I hope I'm not interrupting. I came to check on Mr. Bloom after last night's incident." "Your concern is most touching, Madame," Poirot said, rising with a slight bow. But I wonder if it is Mr. Bloom's health that brings you, or perhaps the contents of this greenhouse." Lady Beatrice's smile faltered, but only for a moment. "You're as perceptive as your reputation suggests, Mr. Poirot. I confess, I've always been fascinated by Mr. Bloom's work. Ravenwood has a history of unconventional pursuits. My ancestors were alchemists, you know. This greenhouse was their laboratory." "Indeed?" Poirot's tone was polite, but his gaze was unrelenting. "And are you aware, madame, of a group called the Order of the Saffron Veil? Her hand froze mid-gesture, a ring glinting on her finger. Order, a fanciful name, nothing more. A relic of my family's eccentric past. Surely you don't believe such nonsense is active today. Poirot did not answer directly. Instead, he turned to Bloom. Monsieur, you said you left the order, yet this journal suggests otherwise. Why keep such detailed records of their work? Bloom's voice was hoarse. To destroy it. I've been trying to find an antidote, a way to undo what I helped create. Okay, but they found me. The rose, the Whodunits, their warning. Lady Beatrice laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Bloom, you're overwrought. This is Ravenwood, not some Gothic novel. Mr. Poirot, surely you see this is all a misunderstanding. Perhaps, Poirot said, his voice soft but unyielding. But misunderstandings do not poison men, madame. Nor do they leave roses with thorns dipped in death. The tension in the greenhouse was palpable, the air thick with unspoken accusations. Hastings shifted uncomfortably, his hand hovering near his pocket, as if expecting trouble. But before anyone could speak, a faint rustle came from the far end of the greenhouse, where a trellis of climbing vines obscured a shadowed corner. Poirot's head snapped toward the sound. Who was there? He called, his voice sharp. Silence. Then a hurried whisper, barely audible. Poirot moved swiftly, his small frame surprisingly agile as he navigated the narrow path. He pushed aside the vines to reveal Victor, Langley, and Clara Vane, their faces flushed, their postures betraying guilt. Clara's hand was clasped tightly in Victor's, and a small satchel lay at their feet, a key, half hidden by leaves. Monsieur Langley, Mademoiselle Vane, Poirot said, his tone deceptively mild. Kay, you have chosen a most curious place for a rendezvous. Or is it an escape? Victor's jaw tightened, but Clara spoke first, her voice trembling yet defiant. We were just talking, Mr. Poirot. Surely there's no crime in that. Talking, Poirot repeated, his eyes flicking to the satchel. And what, pray, is in that bag? Provisions for a moonlight stroll, perhaps? Victor stepped forward, his hands raised. Enough, Poirot. We're not your culprits. We overheard Bloom talking about the order, and we were planning to leave. This place is cursed. People collapsing, poison everywhere. It's madness. Madness, Poirot echoed, or method. You, Monsieur Langley, who wrote a riddle about a murder where the victim does not know they are dead. And you, Mademoiselle Vane, who received threatening letters, yet here you are, together, whispering in the shadows. Tell me, what is it you fear? Clara's eyes glistened with unshed tears. Everything. Its manner, these people. I thought Victor could protect me, but now I'm not sure of anything. Poirot's gaze softened, but only slightly. Fear, mademoiselle, is a powerful weapon, but it is truth that disarms it. Speak plainly, or I shall assume the worst. Victor hesitated, then sighed. We know about the order, Poirot. Not because we're a part of it, but because they've targeted us. Clara's letters, my riddle, they're connected. Someone wants us gone, or worse. And so, you plan to flee, Poirot said, picking up the satchel. Inside were clothes, a wad of cash, and a small vial of the shimmering poison. He held it up, his expression unreadable. This suggests more than fear, monsieur. It suggests complicity. No, Clara cried, stepping forward. That's not ours. Someone must have planted it. Lady Beatrice, who had been watching silently, spoke at last. This is absurd. Mr. Poirot, you're turning my home into a stage 4 melodrama. I insist you stop harassing my guests. Harassment, Madame Poirot's voice was icy. I seek only the truth. And the truth, I fear, is that someone in this greenhouse, Perhaps more than one knows, far more than they admit. He turned to Bloom. Monsieur, you will accompany me to the manor. This journal must be studied further. To Victor and Clara, he added, and you two will remain where I can see you. No more midnight escapes. See vous plot. As they left the greenhouse, Poirot's mind was a whirlwind of connections. The poisons, the order, the rose, the whispered conversation. The garden of secrets had yielded its first fruits, but the harvest was far from complete. He glanced back at the saffron flowers, their petals glowing in the sunlight, and felt a chill. The order of the saffron veil was no relic of the past. It was alive, and it was watching. The stone path back to the manor was lined with roses, their blooms a vivid red against a gray morning mist. Poirot walked slowly, the journal tucked under his arm, his thoughts racing. Hastings, beside him, was unusually quiet, his earlier bluster replaced by unease. Poirot, he said at last, do you really think Bloom's telling the truth? About leaving the order, I mean. He seemed awfully jumpy. Jumpy, yes, Poirot replied, but truthful. That remains to be seen. The heart of a man is a labyrinth, Hastings. Bloom's fear is genuine, but fear can mask many things. Guilt, deception, or even loyalty to a cause he claims to have abandoned. And what about Victor and Clara? Hastings pressed. That's such a bit odd, don't you think? It's running off like that, with poison, no less? Poirot nodded. Their fear, too, is real. But their story lacks the ring of complete truth. Why hide in the greenhouse? Why not come to me, Hercule Poirot, with their concerns? No, there is a piece missing, a thread that connects them to the order, willingly or not. They reached the manor's entrance, where Lady Beatrice waited, her arms crossed, her expression a blend of irritation and defiance. Mr. Poirot, she said, I trust you've satisfied your curiosity, for now. My guests are shaken, and I won't have them interrogated like common criminals. Madame Poirot replied, his voice smooth as velvet. When poison flows as freely as wine in your home, no one is above suspicion, not even you. Her eyes flashed, but she said nothing, turning instead to lead them inside. Bloom followed, his head bowed, while Victor and Clara trailed behind. Their hands no longer clasped, but their glances heavy with shared secrets. In the manor's drawing room, Poirot set the journal on a mahogany table, its leather cover absorbing the light of a nearby chandelier. The other guests were already gathered. Dr. Evelyn Crane, clutching her locket as if it were a talisman. Sir Reginald Thorne, his military bearing strained by the previous night's events. A tea, and the maid, who hovered nervously in the background, eyes darting between the guests. Poirot opened the journal, its pages crackling with age. Mies, Amos, he began, his voice commanding the room's attention. We are no longer merely guests at Ravenwood. We are players in a game of life and death. This journal speaks of the Order of the Saffron Veil, a group that seeks to redefine crime itself. Their weapon is a poison, subtle and deadly, and it is here among us. Dr. Crane's hand tightened on her locket. That's nonsense, she said, her voice sharp. A secret society. In this day and age, you're letting Bloom's paranoia get to you, Mr. Poirot. Paranoia, mademoiselle. Poirot's eyes locked onto hers. Or truth. You, who study ancient manuscripts, surely know that history is full of such societies, their secrets hidden in plain sight. So Reginald cleared his throat. Poirot, I've seen my share of conspiracies in the army. Most are hogwash, but that poison, I'll admit, is like nothing I encountered, even in the war. If Bloom's mixed up in it, he's got some explaining to do. Bloom shrank under the general's gaze. I've told you everything, he said weakly. I'm not with them anymore. I swear it. Clara, her voice trembling, interjected. Then Who put that vial in our satchel? Someone's trying to frame us, Mr. Poirot. You have to believe us. Poirot raised a hand, silencing the room. Belief, mademoiselle, is earned through evidence. Evidence I have. The rose, the poison, the journal law point to a truth that is emerging, piece by piece. But there is one question that burns brightest. Who among you is the hand of the saffron veil? The room fell silent, each guest avoiding the other's eyes. The maid slipped out, unnoticed by all but Poirot, whose gaze followed her briefly. He made a mental note to question her later. She, too, was part of this puzzle. As the afternoon wore on, Poirot retreated to his room to study the journal in detail. Its pages were a tapestry of science and mysticism, detailing experiments with saffron-derived toxins and cryptic references to the reckoning, planned to punish betrayers of the order. One passage stood out, written in a different hand. The manor is the crucible. The guests are the reagents. The rose will bloom when justice is served. Poirot closed the journal, his mind alight with possibilities. The order was not merely a relic, nor was it confined to Bloom's past. It was active, its tendrils woven into the very fabric of Ravenwood. Lady Beatrice's knowledge of her family's alchemical history, Victor and Clara's clandestine meeting, Dr. Crane's secret of Locatol were threads in a web that Poirot was determined to unravel. Dinner that evening was a tense affair. The guests seated around a long oak table laden with silver and crystal. Lady Beatrice presided, her composure a stark contrast to the unease that permeated the room. Poirot watched as the wine was poured, eyes lingering on the chalice at Lady Beatrice's place, silver goblet etched with intricate designs. He made a note to examine it later. It was too ornate, too significant to be mere decoration. As the meal progressed, the conversation turned to the manor's history. Lady Beatrice, perhaps sensing the need to deflect suspicion, regaled them with tales of her ancestors, alchemists who sought the elixir of life. They believed, she said, her voice rich with pride, that knowledge could transcend morality, that science could reshape the world. A dangerous belief, Poirot remarked, his tone light but pointed. Knowledge without conscience is a poison in itself. The table fell silent, and Poirot felt the weight of their gazes. He knew he was close, closer than any of them realized, to unmasking the truth. But the order was clever, its members hidden behind masks of fear, guilt, and deception. The greenhouse had revealed much, but the garden of secrets still held its deepest truths, waiting to be unearthed. As the evening drew to a close, Poirot retired to the rose garden, seeking solace among the blooms. The air was cool, the stars bright above the manor's turrets. He plucked a single red rose, its thorns sharp but free of poison, and held it to the light. The rose, he murmured, is the key. But to what lock? He returned to his room, the journal and the rose, his only companions, determined to solve the riddle before the order's next planto bloomed again. Chapter 7. The Vanishing Guest. The dawn broke over Ravenwood Manor with a deceptive calm, sky awash in hues of rose and gold, as if the estate itself conspired to cloak its secrets in beauty. Hercule Poirot stood at his window, his keen eyes tracing the mist that curled around the ancient oaks lining the drive. The events of the previous days, the cryptic messages, the shimmering poison, the whispered conspiracies, had woven a tapestry of intrigue that demanded his utmost attention. Yet, this morning, a new thread had unraveled. Victor Langley, the playwright, whose riddles had set this mystery in motion, had vanished. Poirot adjusted his tie, his movements precise, his mind already dissecting the implications. Captain Hastings, ever the loyal companion, entered the room, his face a portrait of concern. "Poirot, old chap, have you heard? Langley's gone. His room's empty, bed untouched, and there's a note something about being summoned. It's dashed peculiar, don't you think? Poirot's mustache twitched, a subtle sign of his mind at work. Peculiar, mon ami. Nan, it is deliberate, okay? Disappearance in a house such as this is no accident, okay? It is a statement, a challenge to Poirot's little gray cells. Come, let us see this note. The note, found on Victor's bedside table, was penned in his flamboyant script. I have been summoned by the veil. Do not search for me, for I am where justice demands. The words were cryptic, theatrical, and unmistakably. Victor's Poirot's eyes narrowed as he read, his fingers tracing the paper's edge. The veil, he murmured. The Order of the Saffron Veil. This is no mere playwright's flourish. It's a clue, Hastings, and we must follow it. The manor was abuzz with the news of Victor's disappearance. The guests gathered in the grand drawing room, their faces a mix of fear, suspicion, and curiosity. Lady Beatrice Ravenwood, her composure as regal as ever, stood at the head of the room, her dark eyes scanning the assembly. "This is most distressing," she said, her voice steady, but laced with an undercurrent of unease. "Mr. Langley was a guest under my roof. We must organize a search at once." Poirot, standing near the fireplace, raised a hand. "Madame, a search. Oui, but not a reckless one. We must proceed with method. The disappearance of Monsieur Langley is not an isolated event. It is part of a larger design, one that connects the poison, the coded messages, and the order you claim to know so little about." Lady Beatrice's lips tightened, but she nodded. "Very well, Monsieur Poirot. Direct us as you see fit." Poirot's gaze swept the room, taking in the guests. Clara Vane, the actress, whose nervous glances betrayed her unease. Sir Reginald Thorne, the retired general, his posture rigid as if bracing for battle. Dr. Evelyn Crane, the scholar, clutching her locket as if it were a lifeline. And Mr. Percival Bloom, the botanist, his eyes darting to the windows as if longing to escape to his greenhouse. Each, Poirot knew, held a piece of the puzzle. "First," Poirot announced, "we shall examine Monsieur Langley's room. Hastings, you will accompany me. The rest of you remain here. Do not leave the manor grounds." Victor's room was a study in contrasts, the opulence of Ravenwood. Decor clashed with the chaos of a man who lived for his art. Scripts littered the desk, their pages scrawled with notes and revisions. A half-finished glass of brandy sat beside an ink-stained quill, and a single candle, burned to a stub, suggested Victor had worked late into the night. Poirot's eyes scanned every detail, his mind cataloging the scene. Hastings, ever eager, pointed to the wardrobe. "Look here, Poirot. His clothes are still here, coats, shirts, even his favorite scarf. He didn't pack for a journey." "Nan, Hastings," Poirot replied, his voice low. "He did not leave of his own accord. If he did, it was to create the illusion of absence. Observe the bed." He gestured to the pristine sheets, untouched by sleep. "No one rested here last night, and yet the candle suggests activity. What was Monsieur Langley doing, and where did he go?" Poirot moved to the desk, his fingers brushing over the scripts. One page caught his eye, its margin adorned with a sketch of a saffron-colored veil, its edges curling like flames. Beneath it, a single word: chamber. Poirot's heart quickened. "Hastings, this is no coincidence. The veil, the chamber there, is a place within this manor, a secret place where the answers lie." Their search of the room yielded little else, save for a small key tucked beneath a loose floorboard. It was ornate, its head shaped like a rose, and Poirot pocketed it with a knowing smile. "This, mon ami, will unlock more than a door. It will unlock the truth." The search of the manor grounds began in earnest, with Poirot dividing the guests into pairs to cover the sprawling estate. He and Hastings took the east wing, where the oldest parts of Ravenwood stood, Their stone walls whispering of centuries past. As they moved through dimly lit corridors, Poirot's mind churned. Victor's disappearance was theatrical, yes, but it served a purpose. Was he a victim, or was he orchestrating the drama? Their path led them to a tapestry depicting a medieval hunt, its threads faded but vibrant. Poirot paused, his eyes narrowing. Hastings observed the stitching. "See, it is uneven. Here, at the base." He pressed his hand against the fabric, and to Hastings' astonishment, it gave way, revealing a stone wall with a small, rose-shaped keyhole. "The key!" Hastings exclaimed, but Poirot was already fitting it into the lock. With a soft click, the wall slid aside, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. The air was cool, tinged with the scent of earth and something sharper saffron, perhaps. "Monsieur," Poirot whispered, "we have found the chamber." The staircase led to a subterranean room. Its walls adorned with symbols of the saffron veil, stylized flames, veiled figures, and cryptic runes. A stone altar stood at the center, surrounded by candles, their wax still warm. On the altar lay a single page, torn from a manuscript. Its text, a chilling manifesto. "The Order of the Saffron Veil seeks justice through the unseen. Our crimes are silent, our vengeance eternal." Hastings shivered. "Good Lord, Poirot, this is no game. This is a cult, Hastings, but a cult with purpose. This chamber was used to recently observe the candles. Someone was here, perhaps last night, but where is Monsieur Langley?" Their exploration was cut short by a sound of faint rustling from the shadows. Poirot's hand shot up, silencing Hastings. "We are not alone," he whispered. They crept forward, following the sound to a corner where a figure crouched, rifling through a stack of papers. It was Dr. Evelyn Crane, her face pale, her hands trembling as she clutched a leather-bound book. "Dr. Crane," Poirot said, his voice sharp but calm. "What brings you to this forbidden place?" She gasped, dropping the book. "Monsieur Poirot, I was following a lead. Achia, I've been studying the order, trying to expose them. I found a reference to this chamber in the library manuscripts. I swear I meant no harm." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "And yet, you did not share this with Poirot. Why, mademoiselle? What do you hide?" Dr. Crane's fingers tightened around her locket. I was afraid. The order is dangerous. They've been watching me. I know it. I came here to find proof, to stop them before they act again." Poirot retrieved the book she dropped. Its pages were filled with diagrams of poisons and rituals, each marked with a saffron veil symbol. "This is proof, but of what? That you seek to expose the order, or that you are part of it?" "I'm not," she cried, her voice breaking. "I joined them years ago, yes, but I left when I saw their true nature. They want to redefine crime, to make it undetectable, untraceable. I've been gathering evidence to bring them down." Poirot studied her, his expression unreadable. "Then you will help Poirot. Tell me, where is Victor Langley?" "I don't know," she admitted, "but I heard him last night, speaking with someone in the garden. He sounded afraid." The search continued, but Victor remained elusive. Poirot gathered the guests in the drawing room once more, his presence commanding silence. "Miss Amos," he began, "the disappearance of Monsieur Langley is no accident. It is a piece of a larger puzzle, one that involves the Order of the Saffron Veil. This chamber we have found confirms their activity, their intent to create a crime that defies detection. But Poirot will not be defied." Clara Vane stood, her eyes flashing. "This is absurd. Victor's probably off writing another ridiculous play. Why are we wasting time on this nonsense?" Poirot's gaze was piercing. "Because, mademoiselle, the poison that nearly claimed Monsieur Bloom and the messages that haunt this manor are not nonsense. They are the work of a mind or mind that seek to manipulate us all. And you, Mademoiselle Vane, have been less than forthcoming about your past with Monsieur Langley." Clara paled, but before she could respond, Sir Reginald interjected. "Enough of this. I say we lock the doors and wait for the authorities. This manor is cursed. Cursed." "Nan," Sir Reginald Poirot said, "it is calculated. Cot and Poirot will uncover the truth, no matter how deeply it is buried." As the guests dispersed, Poirot lingered, his mind racing. The chamber, the manifesto, Dr. Crane's confessional pointed to a conspiracy that was both ancient and immediate. Victor's disappearance was the key, but was he a victim, a conspirator, or something else entirely? Poirot's little gray cells hummed with possibility, and as he retired to his room, he knew the night would bring more answers, more questions. Chapter 8. The Poisoned Chalice. The dining room at Ravenwood Manor gleamed with an opulence that seemed to defy the creeping dread that had settled over its inhabitants. Crystal chandeliers cast prisms of light across the mahogany table, where silver cutlery and bone china lay in precise formation, awaiting the evening's meal. The air was thick with the scent of roasted pheasant and rosemary, but beneath the culinary allure, an undercurrent of tension pulsed like a heartbeat. Hercule Poirot sat at the head of the table, his mustache impeccably groomed, his eyes darting from face to face, cataloging every twitch, every glance, every unspoken word. The guests now dwindled to a nervous few after Victor Langley's mysterious disappearance were a tableau of unease. Clara Vane, the actress, her crimson lips tight with defiance. Dr. Evelyn Crane, clutching her locket as if it were a talisman. Sir Reginald Thorne, the retired general, his weathered hands betraying a slight tremor. And Mr. Percival Bloom, the botanist, his eyes darting to the shadows as if expecting an ambush. At the center of it all stood Lady Beatrice Ravenwood, the hostess, her silver hair swept into an elegant chignon, her smile as enigmatic as the Mona Lisa. The meal was to be a grand affair, Lady Beatrice had declared, a gesture to restore civility after the chaos of the past days, the hidden vials of poison, the coded messages, the secret passages, and Victor's vanishing. Poirot, however, saw through the veneer. This dinner was no olive branch. It was a stage, and every guest was an actor in a drama whose script he had yet to decipher. His little gray cells, as he fondly called them, hummed with anticipation, piecing together the mosaic of clues that had accumulated since his arrival at Ravenwood. The red rose with its poisoned thorns, the playwright's riddle, the alchemical manuscript, the order of the saffron veil. The air was heavy with secrets, and Poirot knew that tonight one of them would unravel. Lady Beatrice raised a crystal goblet, her voice smooth as velvet. "My dear friends, let us put aside our troubles and share in the warmth of this table, to unity in the face of adversity." Our eyes sparkled with an emotion Poirot could not quite place: amusement, perhaps, or something darker. The guests murmured their assent, though their expressions betrayed skepticism. Clara Vane's smile was a brittle mask. Sir Reginald's nod was curt, and Dr. Crane's fingers tightened around her locket. Only Bloom seemed momentarily distracted, his gaze fixed on a decanter of wine at the table's center. Poirot sipped his wine, of fine Bordeaux, and observed the ritual of the first course of delicate consomme, served with a flourish by the mannered silent staff. "Madame," he addressed Lady Beatrice, his tone light but probing. "This chalice you have promised for the toast. It is a family heirloom, nest C.P., of great significance, perhaps." Lady Beatrice's smile did not waver. "Oh, indeed, Monsieur Poirot. The Ravenwood chalice is a relic of our storied past, said to have been forged in the time of the Crusades. It is only fitting that we honor our gathering with its presence tonight." She gestured to a velvet-lined case at the sideboard, where a silver chalice gleamed under the candlelight, its surface etched with intricate patterns that seemed to writhe in the flickering glow. "Fascinating," Poirot murmured, his eyes narrowing. "And what of its history? Such artifacts often carry tales of intrigue." He allowed the word to linger, watching her reaction. Her laughter was a silvery chime. "You are a romantic, Monsieur Poirot." "It is merely a cup, though a beautiful one. Tonight it will hold our finest vintage, a symbol of trust." She clapped her hands, and a servant stepped forward to fill the chalice with wine, its ruby depths catching the light like blood. Captain Hastings, seated to Poirot's right, leaned closer. "It seems a bit theatrical, don't you think, Poirot? All this fuss over a cup." "Mon ami," Poirot replied softly. "In the theater of crime, every prop has a purpose. This chalice, I suspect, is no mere decoration." His gaze flicked to Clara, who was watching the servant with an intensity that belied her casual posture. Across the table, Dr. Crane's fingers twitched, and Sir Reginald's jaw tightened as he stared at the chalice. Only Bloom seemed unaffected, though his earlier unease had not entirely dissipated. The consomme was cleared, and the main course arrived a sumptuous pheasant, accompanied by glazed vegetables and a truffle-infused sauce. The conversation turned to lighter topics, orchestrated by Lady Beatrice's deft social maneuvering, but Poirot remained vigilant. He noted the way Clara's eyes darted to the sideboard, where the chalice now stood, filled and waiting. He observed Dr. Crane's subtle glance at Sir Reginald, whose hand hesitated over his fork, and he saw Bloom's fingers tap a nervous rhythm against his glass, a silent Morse code of anxiety, as the dessert coarse poached pears and a spiced caramel was served. Lady Beatrice rose, the chalice in her hands. "And now, my friends, the moment of our toast. Let us drink to truth, for it is the only path to salvation." She passed the chalice to Sir Reginald, who sat nearest her, with a gracious nod. "General, will you do the honors?" Sir Reginald's face was a mask of stoicism, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of hesitation. "Of course, Lady Beatrice." He took the chalice, raised it to his lips, and drank deeply. The room fell silent, the clink of cutlery stilled as every eye followed the chalice's journey. He passed it to Dr. Crane, who hesitated, her locket gleaming as she leaned forward. She sipped, her throat bobbing, handed it to Clara. Clara's fingers trembled as she grasped the chalice, her crimson nails stark against the silver. "To truth," she echoed, her voice a husky whisper. She drank, her eyes locked on Poirot, as if daring him to react. The chalice moved to Bloom, who took it with a muttered "Cheers," and then to Hastings, who glanced at Poirot before drinking. When the chalice reached Poirot, he held it for a moment, turning it in his hands. The etchings were not mere decoration. He realized they formed a pattern, a symbol he had seen before in the ritual chamber beneath the manor, the mark of the Order of the Saffron Veil. His heart quickened, but his face remained impassive. "To truth," he said, his voice clear and deliberate, and he drank, the wine bitter on his tongue. The chalice returned to Lady Beatrice, who drained the last of the wine with a flourish. "There," she said, setting it down. "Now we are bound by this moment. Let no secrets remain hidden." For a moment, the room seemed to exhale. Then Sir Reginald coughed, a harsh, guttural sound that shattered the silence. His hand clutched his throat, his face turning ashen. "Good God," he gasped, his chair scraping back as he staggered to his feet. What is this?" "Chaos!" erupted. Clara screamed. Dr. Crane leapt up, knocking over her glass, and Bloom froze, his eyes wide with horror. Hastings grabbed Poirot's arm, whispering, "Poison, Poirot, it's got to be." Lady Beatrice remained seated, her expression one of serene detachment, as if watching a play unfold. Poirot was on his feet in an instant, his voice cutting through the panic like a blade. "Calm yourselves, Miss Almas, Monsieur Thorne. Sit down at once. Describe what you feel." "Sir." Reginald's knees buckled, but he gripped the table, his voice hoarse, burning in my chest. "Can't breathe properly." His eyes were wild, but he was still conscious, his military discipline holding him upright. Poirot turned to the servant who had filled the chalice. "You fetch water and a basin. Vite, to the others," he barked. "No one leaves this room." He knelt beside Sir Reginald, loosening his collar and examining his pulse. "The symptoms are severe, but you are not yet dead, General." This is a poison, yes, but not a fatal dose, not yet." Dr. Crane, her composure regained, rushed to Sir Reginald's side. "Let me see. I know something of toxicology." She checked his pupils, her hands steady despite the tremor in her voice. "It's the same substance, isn't it? It's a shimmering poison from the library." Poirot nodded, his mind racing. "Oui, mademoiselle. But how did it enter the chalice? We all drank from it, and yet only Monsieur Thorne is affected." He turned to Lady Beatrice, whose calm was now tinged with a faint crease of concern. "Madame, this chalice, when was it last used?" "Not since my father's time," she replied, her voice steady. "It was cleaned and polished for this occasion. I assure you, Monsieur Poirot, I had no part in this." "Perhaps," Poirot said, his tone neutral. He examined the chalice, his gloved fingers tracing the etched symbols. The interior was smooth, but a faint residue clung to the rim, a trace of the shimmering poison, undetectable to the untrained eye. This was no accident. The poison was applied after the wine was poured, targeting one person only. Clara's voice was sharp, cutting through the murmurs. "You're saying one of us did this? Okay, right here, in front of everyone?" Rise darted to Dr. Crane, who flinched. She was near the sideboard. Earlier I saw her. Dr. Crane's face flushed with indignation. "How dare you? I was checking the wine for tampering, not poisoning it." She clutched her locket, her knuckles white. "You're the one with the grudge, Clara. Everyone knows you and Victor were plotting something before he vanished." "Enough." Poirot's voice was a whip crack, silencing the room. "Accusations without evidence are but noise. Let us consider the facts." The chalice was filled, placed on the sideboard, and then passed among us. The poison was applied with precision, affecting only Sir Reginald. Suggests knowledge of his position at the table and access to the chalice during the meal. Bloom, who had been silent, spoke up, his voice unsteady. "But we were all here, eating, talking. Who could have done it without being seen?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "A clever question, Monsieur Bloom. A poisoner is not always seen, but their intent is always felt." He turned to Sir Reginald, who was now sipping water, his color slowly returning. "General, tell me, have you enemies at this table?" "Sir," Reginald coughed, his voice rough but regaining strength. "Enemies. Half the world's got a grudge against a soldier, Poirot. But this," he gestured to the chalice, "this is personal. Someone wants me silenced." "Silenced about what?" Poirot pressed, his tone gentle but insistent. Sir Reginald hesitated, his eyes flicking to Lady Beatrice. "The order. I told you about the wartime poison. I thought it was gone, but if it's here, someone knows more than they should." Lady Beatrice's smile faltered, but she recovered quickly. "The Order of the Saffron Veil is a myth, General. A story my ancestors told to scare their enemies. Surely you don't believe in such nonsense." Poirot's mustache twitched. "Madame, myths often cloak truths. This poison, this chalice, this manner, they are all connected to the order, are they not?" He held up the chalice, the saffron symbol catching the light. "This is no heirloom of the Crusades. It is a relic of a secret society, one that believes in justice through undetectable means. The room gasped as one. Clara's hand flew to her mouth. Dr. Crane's locket slipped from her fingers, and Bloom's chair scraped back as if he meant to flee. Hastings whispered, "Good Lord, Poirot, you're saying they're all in on it?" "No, mon ami," Poirot replied, his voice low. "I am saying the murderer is among us, manipulating events to sow distrust. But they have made a mistake." He set the chalice down with a deliberate clink. "The poison was meant to frighten, not to kill. This is a game of fear, designed to break us apart." Dr. Crane's voice was sharp. "Then why point fingers at me? Clara's the one with motive. She hated Victor, and now he's gone." Clara's eyes blazed. "And what about your locket, Evelyn? What's in it? A picture of your lover, or a member of the order?" She lunged forward, snatching the locket from Dr. Crane's neck before anyone could stop her. The clasp broke, revealing a small photograph of a man in a saffron-colored robe, his face obscured by shadow. Dr. Crane gasped, grabbing for the locket. "That's private. You have no right." Poirot stepped between them, his voice calm but commanding. "Mademoiselle Vane, return the locket. Mademoiselle Crane, explain this photograph." Dr. Crane's eyes filled with tears, but her voice was steady. "He was my brother. He joined the order years ago, then disappeared. I've been searching for him ever since. That's why I'm here, studying their manuscripts. I want to know what happened to him." Poirot's expression softened, but his questions did not. "And this brother, did he know of the poison? Did he teach you its secrets?" "No." Dr. Crane's voice broke. "I learned about it here, in the library. I swear, I'm trying to stop them." Poirot turned to the group, his gaze piercing. "The Order of the Saffron Veil seeks to redefine crime, to punish without trace, but their plan is unraveling. The chalice was a test, a warning, and the first, Hercule Poirot, declared that the murderer is in this room, playing us all for fools." Lady Beatrice rose, her voice icy. "Monsieur Poirot, you go too far. This is my home, and I will not be accused." "I accuse no one," Poirot interrupted, "without proof, but I will find it, okay? And when I do, the truth will shine like the sun." He lifted the chalice, its symbol glinting ominously. "This case, it is not about death. It is about fear, and I will not be afraid." The room fell silent, the weight of his words settling over them like a shroud. Sir Reginald, now steadier, nodded in gratitude. Clara clutched the locket, her defiance crumbling. Dr. Crane wept silently, and Bloom stared at the floor. Lady Beatrice's smile was gone, replaced by a mask of stone. Chapter 9. The unmasking. The air in Ravenwood Manor's drawing room hung heavy with anticipation, as if the very walls held their breath. The grand chandelier above cast a kaleidoscope of light across the faces of the assembled guests, their expressions a mosaic of dread, curiosity, and guarded secrets. Hercule Poirot stood at the center of the room, his small, immaculate figure commanding the space with an authority that belied his stature. His mustache twitched slightly, a telltale sign to Captain Hastings, seated near the fireplace, that the great detective was about to unravel the tangled web of deceit that had ensnared them all. The events of the past days had woven a tapestry of intrigue, the cryptic invitation, the poisoned rose, the playwright's riddle, the hidden manuscripts, the secret passages, and the chilling presence of the Order of the Saffron Veil. Each clue had been a thread, and now Poirot was ready to pull them together into a coherent pattern. The guest lady, Beatrice Ravenwood, Dr. Evelyn Crane, Clara Vane, Sir Reginald Thorne, and Percival Bloom sat in a semicircle, their eyes darting between Poirot and one another. The absence of Victor Langley, the playwright, who had vanished under mysterious circumstances, loomed like a specter over the gathering. "Mies Amos Poirot," began, his voice smooth and measured, yet carrying a weight that silenced the room. "We have been drawn into a game most intricate, a puzzle designed to test not only the intellect, but the very nature of justice itself. Tonight, I, Hercule Poirot, shall reveal the truth behind the events at Ravenwood Manor, truth that redefines the concept of crime." Hastings leaned forward, his notebook forgotten in his lap. He had seen Poirot in such moments before, but there was something different this time. Man intensity in his friend's green eyes that suggested this case had touched a nerve, even in the unflappable detective. The gathering storm. Poirot paced slowly before the hearth, his hands clasped behind his back. "Let us begin with the invitation," he said, his accent lending a musical cadence to his words. A letter, anonymous, yet written with such elegance. Ken, promising a crime that would redefine the very nature of crime. It was no mere boast, Nan, for here we are, surrounded by poison, riddles, and secrets, each of you a player in this drama. Lady Beatrice, regal in her velvet gown, raised an eyebrow. "Monsieur Poirot, you speak as if we are all complicit. I am the hostess of this gathering, and I assure you, my only intention was to provide an entertaining weekend." Poirot's lips curled into a faint smile. "Lady Beatrice, your hospitality is unquestioned. But the stage you have set is far more complex than a mere social affair. Let us consider the facts, shall we? Red rose, its thorns coated in a poison so rare it defies detection. A riddle presented by Monsieur Langley, describing a murder where the victim does not know they are dead. A manuscript in the library, revealing the existence of the Order of the Saffron Veil. A secret passage, a ritual chamber, and a chalice etched with symbols of this mysterious order. And, most recently, the poisoning of Sir Reginald, who, mercifully, survives." Sir Reginald, his face, pale but resolute, shifted in his chair. "I've told you, Poirot, I have no connection to this poison. Ticked. My wartime experiments were decades ago, and the substance was destroyed." "We, so you say?" Poirot replied, his tone neutral, but his eyes sharp. "Yet the poison reappears, synthesized here at Ravenwood, in the greenhouse of Monsieur Bloom." He turned to the botanist, whose nervous fidgeting had not gone unnoticed. "You, monsieur, admitted to a past association with the order. You claim to have left it, but the plants in your care tell a different story." Bloom's hands trembled as he adjusted his spectacles. "I've told you everything, Poirot. I cultivate those plants for research, nothing more. I'm no murderer." Poirot raised a hand, silencing him. "Patience, monsieur. We shall come to the question of murder in due time. But first, let us consider Mademoiselle Vane." He turned to the actress, whose beauty seemed undimmed even under the strain of suspicion. "Your performance in the theater was most compelling, yet it nearly ended in tragedy when a prop dagger proved to be real. You have received threatening letters accusing you of betrayal. And you, too, are linked to the order through your past with Monsieur Langley." Clara's eyes flashed with defiance. "I've done nothing wrong, Monsieur Poirot. Okay. Victor and I had our differences, but that's ancient history. As for these letters, they are the work of a coward trying to frighten me." "Perhaps," Poirot said, his voice soft but probing. "Or perhaps they are a distraction meant to divert attention from your true role in this affair." He turned to Dr. Crane, who sat clutching her locket, her face a mask of composure. "And you, Doctor, have been most elusive. Your studies of alchemical poisons, your discovery of the coded messages, your locket containing the photograph of a man tied to the orderall suggest a deeper involvement than you have admitted." Dr. Crane's lips tightened. "I am a scholar, Monsieur Poirot. My interest is academic. I sought to expose the order, not aid it. Poirot nodded, as if considering her words, but his eyes never left her face. We shall see. But there is one guest missing from our gathering, Monsieur Victor Langley. His disappearance, his note claiming he was summoned by the veil, has cast a shadow over us all. Where is he, and what is his role in this intricate plot? The room fell silent, the only sound the crackling of the fire. Hastings felt a chill despite the warmth of the room. Poirot's methodical dismantling of the guests' facades was a masterclass in deduction, but the tension was palpable. Someone or something was about to break. The web of motives. Poirot stopped pacing and faced the group. His expression graved. Let us reconstruct the events, Nan. The Order of the Saffron Veil, as we have learned, is no myth. It is a secret society dedicated to a new form of justice, one that punishes not with death, but with fear, paranoia, and the destruction of the mind. Their weapon is a poison that kills slowly, invisibly, leaving the victim unaware until it is too late. This is the crime that redefines crime, means a murder of the soul. A gasp escaped Clara, and even Lady Beatrice's composure wavered. Poirot continued, undeterred. The rose on my pillow was a warning, a challenge to uncover this plot before it could be fully realized. The riddle, the manuscripts, the ritual chamber were clues, carefully placed to draw me into the game. But who is the mastermind? Who orchestrates this symphony of deceit? He turned to Lady Beatrice. You, madame, have presented yourself as the gracious hostess. Yet you admitted to knowing of the order. Your family's history is intertwined with Ravenwood Manor, and the chalice etched with the order's symbol belongs to you. Is it not possible that you are the architect of this scheme? Lady Beatrice rose, her voice steady but laced with indignation. Monsieur Poirot, I have welcomed you into my home, and you'll repay me with accusations. I knew of the orders. History, yes, but only as a relic of my family's past. I am no criminal. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Then let us consider another possibility. Monsieur Langley, the playwright, is a man of drama, of illusion. His riddle spoke of a murder without a corpse, a concept that aligns perfectly with the order's philosophy. His disappearance, his note, they are too convenient, too theatrical. Is it not possible that he is not a victim, but a puppeteer, pulling the strings from the shadows? A murmur rippled through the room. Hastings scribbled furiously in his notebook, trying to keep up with Poirot's rapid-fire deductions. Idea that Victor was not missing but orchestrating the entire affair was a twist he hadn't anticipated. And yet, Poirot continued, there is another layer to consider. The poison, synthesized in the greenhouse, points to Monsieur Bloom. The threatening letters and the real dagger implicate Mademoiselle Vane. The coded messages in the locket suggest Decor Crane, and Sir Reginald's past with experimental poisons cannot be ignored. Each of you has a motive, a connection to the order, but only one of you is the true mastermind. Lee, unmasking. Poirot's voice dropped to a near whisper, forcing the guests to lean forward. Let us imagine a scenario, Mies, Amos, scenario where the Order of the Saffron Veil has been revived, not to kill, but to punish, to create a crime so subtle, so insidious that it destroys its victims from within. The poisonings, Sir Reginald, Monsieur Bloom, were not meant to kill, but to terrify. The riddle, the messages, the chamber, they were designed to sow distrust, to make each of you suspect the others. And who benefits from such chaos? Who has the skill to craft such a narrative? He paused, his gaze sweeping the room. Monsieur Victor Langley. A collective gasp filled the air. Clara's hand flew to her mouth, and Dr. Crane's locket slipped from her fingers, clattering to the floor. Poirot raised a hand, forestalling protests. Victor Langley is not missing. He is here, among us, hiding in plain sight. He has orchestrated this entire affair to test his theory of the perfect crime that requires no death, only fear. But he is not alone. He has a partner, someone who has guided him, someone with the resources and the motive to revive the order. Poirot turned to the door, his voice ringing out, "Sir Langley, you may reveal yourself." The room froze. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, from the shadows of the doorway, a figure stepped forward. Victor Langley, his face pale but composed, entered the drawing room. His eyes met Poirot's, and a faint smile played on his lips. "Well played, Monsieur Poirot," Victor said, his voice carrying the cadence of a seasoned performer. "I knew you would unravel it eventually." Clara leapt to her feet. "Victor, you've been here all along. What is this madness?" Victor raised a hand, his expression calm but intense. "It was necessary, Clara. The Order of the Saffron Veil is real, and its leader is among us. Staged my disappearance to draw them out, to force their hand. I am not the villain, Poirot. I am the one who sought to expose them." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "A noble motive, perhaps, but your methods, monsieur, are most unorthodox. You have endangered lives, manipulated emotions, all to unmask your true target. And that target is—" He turned, his gaze locking onto Lady Beatrice. "You, madame." Lady Beatrice's face drained of color. "This is absurd. I am no criminal, Poirot. You have no proof." "But I do," Poirot said, his voice cutting through her protest. "The chalice, etched with the saffron veils, symbol, is a family heirloom, yes, but it was you who tampered with it, poisoning Sir Reginald to test the Order's methods. The ritual chamber, hidden beneath your manor, was reactivated under your orders. Coded messages, the poison in the greenhouse all point to you as the leader of the Order, revived to punish those who, in your eyes, betrayed your family." Lady Beatrice's composure shattered. She sank back into her chair, her hands trembling. "You don't understand," she whispered. "My family was ruined by betrayal by those who turned their backs on us, who stole our legacy. The Order was my way of reclaiming justice, of making them feel the fear we felt." Poirot's expression softened, but his voice remained firm. "Justice, madame, is not served through fear. It is served through truth. You have orchestrated a crime that sought to break the minds of your guests, but you have underestimated the power of the little gray cells." The final twist as Lady Beatrice bowed her head, the room seemed to exhale. Hastings felt a surge of triumph, but Poirot's posture suggested he was not yet satisfied. "There is one final matter," Poirot said, turning to Victor. "You, monsieur, have played a dangerous game. Your note spoke of being summoned by the veil, yet you were never summoned. You wrote it to mislead us, to make us believe you were a victim. Why?" Victor hesitated, then sighed. "I had to be certain, Poirot. I suspected Beatrice, but I needed proof. By staging my disappearance, I forced her to act, to reveal her hand. I regret the fear I caused, but it was the only way." Poirot nodded, but his eyes held a trace of reproach. "You have exposed a great evil, monsieur, but at a cost. The Order of the Saffron Veil is no more, and Lady Beatrice will face justice. But let this be a lesson. The truth does not require deception to shine." He turned to the group, his voice resolute. "This case is closed, Ms. Amos. Lady Beatrice, you will accompany the authorities when they arrive. The rest of you return to your lives, but remember the lesson of Ravenwood. The mind is a fragile thing, and true crime lies not in the act, but in the intent." As the guests dispersed, Hastings approached Poirot, his notebook clutched tightly. "Good Lord, Poirot, that was extraordinary. But are you certain it's over? There's something in your eyes that suggests otherwise." Poirot's mustache twitched. "You are perceptive, mon ami, There is always a shadow, a lingering doubt. But for now, the case is solved. Let us leave the shadows to the night. As they stepped into the hallway, Poirot paused, his gaze falling on a single red rose placed on a side table. Its thorns were bare, its petals untouched by poison. He picked it up, turning it in his hands, and Hastings saw a flicker of unease in his friend's eyes. "What is it, Poirot?" Hastings asked. Poirot smiled faintly. "Perhaps nothing, Hastings, or perhaps one final twist waiting in the wings." Chapter 10. The Final Rose. The morning sun filtered through the heavy drapes of Ravenwood Manor, casting a golden haze over the rose garden where Hercule Poirot stood, small, immaculate figure framed against the riotous blooms. The air was thick with the scent of roses, their petals trembling in the faint breeze, as if whispering secrets of the night before. Lady Beatrice Ravenwood, the mastermind of the Order of the Saffron Veil, had been taken into custody by the local constabulary, her confession still echoing in Poirot's mind. The guests, those who remained, were preparing to depart, their faces etched with a mixture of relief and unease. Yet, for Poirot, the case was not yet closed. His little gray cells, as he so fondly called them, hummed with the persistent sense that one final thread remained unpulled. One last truth lay hidden beneath the surface of this intricate tapestry of deception. Captain Hastings, ever loyal, stood a few paces away, his hands clasped behind his back as he surveyed the garden. "I must say, Poirot," he began, his voice tinged with admiration, "you've outdone yourself this time, unmasking Lady Beatrice as the head of that ghastly order. Why, it's the sort of thing one reads in novels. But are you quite satisfied? You've got that look about you, old chap, the one that says you're not entirely done." Poirot's mustache twitched, a faint smile playing at the corners of his lips. "Mon ami, you know me too well. It's a case. It is resolved. But there is how do you say? A shadow that lingers. The Order of the Saffron Veil. It is not merely the creation of Lady Beatrice. There is a rhythm to this affair, a pattern that suggests a deeper purpose. And then there is the matter of the rose." Hastings frowned, his brow furrowing. "The rose? You mean that one you found on your pillow when we arrived? The one with the poison on its thorns?" Nan, Hastings," Poirot corrected gently, his eyes gleaming with that familiar spark of insight. "Not that rose. Another. Come, let us walk, and I shall explain." They strolled through the garden, the gravel crunching beneath their polished shoes, meticulously tended, formed a labyrinth of color and fragrance, their beauty a stark contrast to the sinister events that had unfolded within the manor's walls. Poirot's gaze swept over the blooms, his mind racing as he recounted the events of the past days. Lady Beatrice's confession had been dramatic, delivered in the drawing room with all the theatricality of a Shakespearean tragedy. She had admitted to reviving the order, a secret society her ancestors had founded centuries ago, with the aim of punishing those who had wronged her family. The poison, the coded messages, the ritual chamber were part of her elaborate scheme to instill fear, to create a crime so subtle it was almost intangible. Yet Poirot's intuition told him there was more to the story, a piece that did not fit neatly into Beatrice's narrative. As they rounded a corner, Poirot stopped abruptly, his eyes fixed on a single red rose lying on a stone bench, its petals vibrant against the weathered gray. Unlike the first rose, its thorns were clean, free of the shimmering poison that had marked the beginning of this affair. Beside it lay a folded piece of parchment, sealed with a wax emblem bearing the faint outline of a saffron veil. "Hastings," Poirot said softly, his voice barely above a whisper, "regard as the final rose." Hastings stepped forward, peering at the flower and the note. "Good heavens, Poirot, what does it mean? Another clue? I thought we'd caught the culprit." Poirot picked up the note with delicate fingers, breaking the seal with a practiced motion. He unfolded the parchment and read aloud, his voice steady but laced with curiosity. Monsieur Poirot, you have seen through the veil, but not all truths are revealed in the light of confession. I am not what I seemed, nor is the order what you believe. Seek the heart of the rose, and you will find redemption. Yours, in truth. VL, Hastings mused, scratching his chin. Victor Langley, of course, keen, but I thought he was part of the order's scheme, playing his part to expose Beatrice. Is he saying there's more to it? Poirot nodded, his eyes narrowing as he examined the rose. Victor Langley, the playwright, the man who vanished and then returned to unmask his own accomplice. He claimed to be a pawn, manipulated by Lady Beatrice, but this note, it suggests he played a deeper game. A double agent, perhaps, or something more. Come, Hastings, we must find him before he departs. They hurried back to the manor, where the remaining guests were gathered in the grand hall, their luggage piled near the entrance. Clara Vane, the glamorous actress, stood by a window, her face pale but composed, her eyes darting